All right, but you got bit recently by a shark. What happened exactly, and what did it feel like? What happened?
Oh, it was a pretty crazy experience. We were down in the Florida Keys for the mini lobster. It's a 2-day short season before the actual commercial guys go out and catch lobster. A lot of boats, a lot of people, you know, I mean, hundreds of boats out there. We were catching lobsters, some spiny lobsters all over the place, and shooting a few fish here and there, and, you know, just doing Keys stuff, and had a fish that ended up being too short and put it back in the water. When I put it back in the water, it didn't kind of go away. It kind of hung out there. So I took it and pushed it down to the bottom, and stuffed it in the hole about 8 yards away, and
bit by an
swimming back to the boat.
When asked about snake bites, he said, "Not seriously, snake bite, just
on the leg and the knee area, and kind of one quick clamp and took off. So the tail end of the shark, but it was a pretty exciting experience for sure.
Wow, exciting isn't the word I would use here, but anyway, listen, so when the shark hit, what was the sensation or the feeling like?
Oh man, it was like nothing I could really compare it to. It felt like being hit by a boat and drug across the asphalt at the same time. I mean, it was like an instant, like there was no real pain because it had happened so fast. And you know, I've been in the water many times my whole life, and I got 2 younger brothers, and you know, we sneak up on each other and grab each other by the foot and all those kind of things. And this was clearly not somebody messing with me. I mean, it hit so hard, it just kind of felt like oh my gosh, what was that? And rolled over and just saw the big shark all the way. And I had my 4-month-old, a 2-year-old, and a 5-year-old, and plus all my kids' nieces and nephews were all swimming right next to my boat. So the first thing in my mind was, oh my gosh, I got to get back and get them out of the water. So as I turned around, were already kind of climbed out of the water. They seen the commotion of me, and somebody else said something about a shark, and so they were all climbing out as it was. But got back and jumped up on the boat and looked, and my 5-year-old goes, "Oh man," he goes, "That's a good one." he said, "At least it didn't bite you on the head, because then you couldn't wear hats."
Sure, concerns of a 5-year-old. So, Jane, and I'm told this was a lemon shark. They were all over the Keys, I guess, and the water's down. So how many stitches did you get? A lot of blood?
I ended up not a lot of blood. I carry a very good first aid kit. You know, it's kind of the stuff you need. You know, not just Band-Aids and wipes, but you know, compression kits and things like that, and stuff that really came in handy this time. I mean, I've carried it for so long, and I've always said, you know, oh man, you know, what I carry this thing for? I've never used it, and that day was the day it came in handy. And sure enough, I mean, it really made the experience a lot less traumatic. There's not a lot of blood. I ended up with 24 stitches and a bunch of these little steri strips all over my legs, because it got me in the back of the leg, on the side of the leg, and on the top on the knee area. You know, it punctured me probably 15 times in 15 different places, and then some pretty good long lacerations. So it's up there with the top wounds that I've had. It was pretty good one. As far as not that bad, but you know, but definitely ruined my day for sure. We had just caught all the lobsters we were allowed to catch for that day, so we were kind of going home. But we had a whole other day the next day, and I had to be boat captain and just drive the next day. I wasn't allowed to get in the water, so my wife called me president.
Yeah, it's not. So listen, what was worse, the shark bite or the alligator bite? Because you got bit by an alligator as well, right?
So the shark bite was definitely worse as far as, you know, what having to go to the hospital and things like that. The alligator bite was probably worse in the how it went. Like the alligator had what happened is we were hunting alligators. You get tags for alligators, you know, like they do for deer and all the different animals and stuff. They do that in Florida with alligators. So we had our recreational tags, and 2 guys that were with me, and the 2 guys both had a rope on the alligator, and they kind of got tangled up. So I went down to kind of, you know, assess the alligator part of the job while they untangled the ropes. And as I was doing that, I had the alligator by the snout, and he decided he didn't want to go with me, and rolled out my hands, clamped on my leg, and swooped back into the water. And I was like, oh my gosh. I mean, I've had my hands on him hundreds of times. I never had one bite me. I've had him run from me and roll from me, but never had one bite me. And this one, he clamped right on my upper thigh. And it was, you pretty dirty water area, so it was heavily infected pretty quick. I had to take a bunch of antibiotics and stuff like that and get it all cleaned out, and pretty much my whole leg turned black and blue, minus maybe my foot. But it was quite the experience. It felt like, just a super hard pressure, and it didn't break anything. I mean, it didn't necessarily break the skin, other than where the teeth just went in and individually. But it was a good one.
There you go. You got stories to tell, and there you go. Because now I guess you can still wear a hat, because he didn't get you. The shark didn't get you on the head, or did the
exactly.
Justin, I appreciate you sharing those stories with us. It's wild. Stay safe. You'd think that COVID-19 is the thing you got to worry about, but evidently not. All right. Good to talk to you. All the best.
Thanks for having me. Have a good one.
Yep. Justin Stoller again, Florida man, survived being bitten by a gator as well as a shark.
Let me ask you something, Bob.
Laid off due to COVID-19, you are entitled to full severance pay if you're not recalled to work by your employer, where 90% of employees are off.
Radio roulette, what we got?
Shay speaking to me from California about her attempt to keep in touch with her half-sister in Myanmar. Now, you may remember a couple of weeks ago on the program, we interviewed Ari Ben Menashe, a man who's being paid as a public affairs consultant by the coup leaders in Myanmar. Among the many extraordinary assertions in that interview, Mr. Ben Menashe claimed that the Israeli government was lobbying the United States on behalf of the coup leaders. The Israeli government has since been in touch to say that Mr. Ben Menashe does not represent Israel in any way. Israel does not support the Myanmar regime or lobby for it, and Israel condemns the coup and calls for the immediate restoration of democracy. You're listening to the BBC World Service, and this is News Hour, coming to you live from London with James Kimarasamy. Coming up later on in the program, Ukraine's foreign minister on the increasing tensions on his country's eastern border.
We register the military buildup of Russia along northern part of the border between Ukraine and Russia, along eastern border, and also in the illegally occupied Crimea. So from three directions, we observe a military buildup of the Russian Federation.
More on that in just a minute. The headlines of this hour. Streets around the US Capitol building in Washington in lockdown after a motorist ran down two police officers, killing one of them. The suspect is also dead. US officials will travel to Vienna next week as negotiations on the 2015 nuclear deal take place between Iran and other world powers. But there won't be direct talks between Washington and Tehran. You're listening to the BBC World Service. This is News Hour, coming to you live from London with James Kimarasamy. The conflict in eastern Ukraine, which began in 2014, may get little attention, but that doesn't mean it's over. And over the past few weeks, fears have been growing that what is often characterized as a frozen conflict between Russian-backed separatist forces and the Ukrainian military is about to heat up and change its state into something rather more volatile. Last week, 4 Ukrainian soldiers were killed in shelling, and the Ukrainians and NATO are now accusing Russia of building up its forces in the region. Today, the US President Joe Biden called his Ukrainian counterpart, Volodymyr Zelensky, for the first time since taking office. According to the White House, he reaffirmed the United States' unwavering support for Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity in the face of Russia's ongoing aggression in the Donbass and Crimea. But Jonah Fisher is the BBC's correspondent in Kiev.
For the last several weeks, there have been increasing reports coming both from the Ukrainian side and indeed on social media of Russian military movements just along the border with Ukraine. Russia itself has been saying that they don't intend to do anything aggressive, but certainly it's led to an escalation in tension along that area. NATO has also expressed some concern about what's going on. And this comes after quite a lengthy period in which eastern Ukraine was very quiet. There was a ceasefire effectively agreed in late 2019, which, unlike previous ceasefires, had largely held. There were small violations, but not significant number of soldiers being killed. And over the last few weeks, that has changed. The mood has changed in eastern Ukraine. We had 4 Ukrainian soldiers die about a week ago in Shelly. So that all feeds into this sense that something has changed. There's a different dynamic on the ground. And I think certainly here in Ukraine, people are getting increasingly worried.
And what reasons are people in Ukraine giving for this?
There isn't really a clear motivation from either the Ukrainian side or the Russian side to escalate this. Ukraine, for its part, knows that any attempt to take back these so-called rebel territories in eastern Ukraine is counter to suicide for Ukraine, because they know that it would trigger a massive response from Russia to support them and probably push further into Ukraine. The question is more what might be in it for Russia to perhaps escalate things, increase the tension a little bit. One thing that I think people are looking at is the southern part of Ukraine. They're looking at Crimea, which of course Russia illegally annexed back in 2014, and there have been persistent problems in Crimea in terms of water supply. So one thing which some people are suggesting is there might be some sort of link to that, some idea of creating a road corridor linking Crimea to Russia above the Azov Sea there. So there's definitely a sense that things have changed.
And it's a reminder that this is unfinished business.
It's been impossible for the various different negotiators who've been involved in eastern Ukraine to make much progress. They pretty much have to settle for dampening it down, trying to reduce the number of violations that take place, the number of people dying. But in terms of trying to resolve exactly what's going to happen in these 2 separatists, some people call them, others would call them Russian-backed republics in eastern Ukraine, well, there's been no progress on that front, really. You know, that's been the situation for the last 6-7 years, and we've really moved no closer to it being resolved.
BBC's Jonah Fisher in Kiev. Well, Dmytro Kuleba is Ukraine's foreign minister. What's his understanding of what's going on in the east of his country?
We register the military buildup of Russia along northern part of the border between Ukraine and Russia. Along eastern border, there is a part that remains uncontrolled by the Ukrainian government, and also in the illegally occupied Crimea. So from 3 directions,
which part of Crimea is legally occupied?
Buildup of the Russian Federation. On a parallel track, we also register an increasing number of disinformation and Russian propaganda, spreading fake news that Ukraine is preparing for an offensive in Donbass, and therefore Russia has to stand up and defend those territories which it holds under its occupation.
Yes, I mean, the Kremlin spokesman talks about multiple provocations by the armed forces of Ukraine. Is that's not happening?
It is true that the number of violations of the ceasefire has increased in recent weeks, but they all came from government non-controlled territories. And it is the Ukrainian army that suffers casualties, and we lose our soldiers. So I absolutely object any accusations against Ukraine in organizing provocations. It is Russia provoking Ukrainian forces. Ukraine is not looking for any escalation. We do not need war. We want peace and de-occupation of our territories through diplomacy, not war.
Why do you think then Russia is building up its forces?
We believe that the reasons for that is, on the one hand, it's the action taken by the government and the president of Ukraine against pro-Russian oligarchs and pro-Russian media spreading disinformation in Ukraine. On the other hand, it's a message to the United States, the European Union, and the United Kingdom and other countries who reacted strongly in response to the attempted murder of Alexei Navalny and his further imprisonment. So we believe that the actions currently undertaken by Russia is a message not only to Ukraine, but also to the European Union, the United States, United Kingdom, and other parts.
So in other words, you say that Russia is using the situation in the east of your country as part of a broader geopolitical point that it's trying to make.
Eastern part of Ukraine, currently under temporary occupation of Russia, is just part of the battlefield of the global struggle between democracies and autocracies.
You hear that the Ukrainians are somehow aggressive against Russia.
Western democracies on many other fronts, in cyberspace, by spreading disinformation, by meddling into elections, by undermining democratic institutions abroad, by murdering opponents of Vladimir Putin in Western countries. These are all battlefields.
President Biden spoke to President Zelensky today. Can you tell us about that phone call? How important was it? And what message did you get?
We
need a
appreciate
socialist
the
Canadian
moment
provinces.
of the
Don't kill
call
us all.
at this very
You know where the
challenging
sewers are, you
moment.
don't.
President Biden called President Zelensky,
Someone has to
and
clean
he's expressed his unwavering support to Ukraine in our fight against Russian aggression. They discussed security matters and also reforms which Ukraine is undertaking in order to introduce that European rules and standards.
Beyond rhetorical support, are you getting enough support? Do you want more in terms of military support from the United States?
Well, we have enjoyed a very good and reliable partnership with the United States, with the United Kingdom and other countries, Canada and other countries, when it comes to supporting our defense capabilities. But of course, if Russian escalation continues, we will need more support to repel Russian attacks if they decide to advance. So we did receive assurances that Ukraine will not be left alone with the enemy.
So Ukraine is and will fight back.
I would like to once again reiterate that Ukraine is not seeking any escalation. We do not want to suffer more losses in lives of civilians or of our soldiers. We are seeking diplomatic solution to this conflict, and we want Russia, we call on Russia to publicly express unwavering commitment to the ceasefire. This is what Russia declines to do, both in the Normandy format and in the trilateral contact group, which are two main negotiating formats. If Russia is committed to peace, as Ukraine is, the message is simple. Russia should say publicly that they recommit to the ceasefire on the ground.
That was Ukraine's Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba. You're listening to NewsHour from the BBC World Service.
Distribution of the BBC NewsHour in the U.S. is supported by C3AI. C3AI software enables organizations to use artificial intelligence at enterprise scale, solving previously unsolvable business problems. Learn more at C3.ai. This is enterprise AI. And by Indeed, with tools like skill tests designed to help quality candidates show hiring managers what they can do. Learn more at Indeed.com/credit.
Coming up on NewsHour in the next 30 minutes, the US economy saw a surge in hiring in March, but is this really a return to normal? Get the latest on the death of a police officer outside the US Capitol building. The BBC sees evidence of a possible war crime in northern Ethiopia, and is COVID the unwanted form of birth control that could bring an end to Hungary's baby boom? All of that after the news.
I thought religion was, never mind.
BBC News. A car is...
Oh, wait.
Of this study of earning an extra 200.
Whoa, hold on.
Shots were fired. The suspect was apprehended and quickly transferred to hospital in a critical condition. He was pronounced dead later. One of the two injured police officers has also died. The capital precinct is on lockdown. The US says its representatives will travel to Vienna, where delegations from the other world powers will meet their Iranian counterparts for talks on the 2015 nuclear deal, but there will be no direct negotiations between the Americans and the Iranians. The Dutch government is suspending the use of the AstraZeneca coronavirus vaccine for people under the age of 60, following 5 reported cases of blood clots in women who have been vaccinated. One of the women died. 400,000 people have been given the jab. The top homicide investigator for the U.S. city of Minneapolis has given testimony in the murder trial of Derek Chauvin, the former white police officer who was seen kneeling on the neck of the black man George Floyd for more than 9 minutes.
He went to jail. He's not white anymore.
Said that he had never been trained to kneel on someone's neck.
Yeah, I was thinking
A
that
rebel
myself.
group in the Central African
I think they're
Republic
trained to
says
never-
its leader, SICKLY,
Why? Because the person died.
Mothers and fathers can be instrumental.
an alliance of other powerful armed groups which launched an offensive against the government. Pastors at an evangelical church in Haiti have confirmed that a priest and at least 3 of the congregation have been kidnapped while they were streaming a religious ceremony live on social media. They were performing live in a studio next to their church when armed men walked up to the stage and led them away. And that's the summary from BBC News.
Hey, that happened to me here. Nobody cared.
Welcome back to NewsHour. The number of people with jobs in the United States rose by 916,000 in March. That's the biggest monthly gain since last August. Let's find out more. We're joined now by Sarah House of Wells Fargo Securities. Welcome to the program.
Driven, demanding father, and Rose Kennedy, the cold and distant mother, pushing the boys to attain power and success. The angle that people have not paid attention to, and what this book brings out, is the fact that the parents pushed the boys to look beyond America's borders, to learn about the world, to care about the world, and to, when they attain power, change the world, change America's place in the world, and through that, change the world itself. And they not only encouraged them, but they made it happen. Joe Kennedy pushed his 3 boys, also his older one, Joe Jr., who died tragically of war, but then Jack, Bobby, and Ted, he sent them overseas on trips. And it wasn't like the boys sort of said, can we go? He said, you're going. And then when they went, each of them, through Joe's influence, worked as a foreign correspondent for a news outlet. So they sent dispatches back home, and they were able to position themselves as global thinkers. And they learned an enormous amount about different leaders and different peoples and different cultures and different ideologies. And they put all of that to great use over the course of more than 60 years when they shared power, from Jack's election to the House in 1947 all the way to Ted Kennedy's death as a senator in 2009. So that's what the story. That's what the book is about.
Getting booked the next week.
So you're saying there was, in effect, a template or a master plan from the outset, from very young age, grooming them for public service, and they fulfilled the obligation. I mean, Jack was a young man. He wrote Why England Slept, during the 30s.
Could have been listening to BBC.
With a split Senate, this might not have seemed so substantial.
What the fuck is going on? If I want to hear about
we still would have seen a relatively fast recovery. Remember, we did get 2 other major packages, both in the immediate aftermath last March, but then also in December. And really, you have to keep in mind that pandemic-induced downturn.
Insomniacs listening to right now.
Discussion about Japan's geostrategic design too.
Oh dear.
The essence of Belt and Road Initiative is to invest in 4 countries and nurture them as potential centers of consumption of your products. And of course, a lot of people have extended analysis, but you really need to move away.
He's going to take
and according to Mark Siri, an associate professor in the Department of Psychology at the University at Buffalo, and
You're listening to the BBC World Service, and this is NewsHour, coming to you live from London with James Kamarasamy. The BBC has obtained a series of disturbing videos that appear to show a massacre of unarmed civilians in Ethiopia's northern Tigray region by people apparently dressed in Ethiopian army uniforms. Ethiopia's government launched a military campaign in Tigray last November against regional forces there, following an attack on an army base in the area. There have been accusations of serious abuses committed by all sides in the conflict, which until very recently has been subject to a media blackout. And a warning, listeners may find this report from our Africa correspondent Leila Nathu upsetting.
Armed men in uniform leading a group towards a cliff edge. Bodies appear strewn across the ground. Throw it off a cliff, a man shouts. It would be great if there was gas to burn these people, one says. A number of graphic videos were passed to the BBC and began circulating on social media last month. We've been able to match elements of the landscape shown in them to features visible on satellite images to identify the location. Mabere Dago in Ethiopia's northern Tigray region. In November last year, the Ethiopian army began an offensive in the region against the Tigray People's Liberation Front, or TPLF, who are challenging central government rule. Troops from Eritrea are also involved, backing the Ethiopian government. The conflict has largely been hidden from view as access has been severely limited. The UN is currently investigating numerous allegations of atrocities committed by all sides. We can't say for sure when these videos were filmed, nor can we be certain about when a massacre might have occurred in Mabere Dago. But the armed men are wearing uniforms that match those used by the Ethiopian National Defence Force, or ENDF. They're heard speaking Amharic, one of Ethiopia's official languages. The victims are dressed in civilian clothing and are heard speaking the language of the Tigray region. In one clip, the armed men suggest the captives belong to the Tigray People's Liberation Front.
This is the end of TPLF. We don't show mercy.
Letitia Bader is the Horn of Africa director at Human Rights Watch.
I mean, since the beginning of the conflict in the Tigray region, we've documented a whole magnitude of very serious abuses, including extrajudicial executions by Ethiopian government forces and their allies. And this is absolutely an incident which would require further investigation, because what we are seeing here in the video could amount to war crime.
In response, the Ethiopian government told us they were open to independent investigations in the Tigray region and said social media posts and claims could not be taken as evidence. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed recently acknowledged reports of massacres and rapes in Tigray, saying professionalism must be strengthened and disciplinary gaps would be addressed. After months of darkness, slowly a horrifying picture is beginning to emerge of the bloody events that have occurred in Ethiopia over the past 5 months.
That was our Africa correspondent Leila Nathu. The US Capitol building is once again in the news, not for the legislation being debated or passed inside it, but for the security situation around it. A motorist has driven a car into 2 Capitol police officers, and in the past hour, Acting Chief of Police Yogananda Pittman announced the death of one of her colleagues.
At this time, the suspect has been pronounced deceased. 2 U.S. Capitol police officers were transported to 2 different hospitals. And it is with a very, very heavy heart that I announce one of our officers has succumbed to his injuries.
BBC's Barbara Plett-Usher joins us now from Washington. Barbara, what details do we know about this incident?
This took place around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Washington time. A man rammed his car into the security barrier about 100 yards away from the entrance to the Senate side of the Capitol building, and he hit 2 police officers, and then he got out of the car brandishing a knife, police said, and started to run aggressively towards the officers, lunged towards them was how it was described, at which point he was shot. He was taken to hospital and has been pronounced dead. The 2 police officers were also taken to hospital. One was medevaced via helicopter, but one of them has come to his injuries and has also passed away. We don't know anything about this man other than that he is an American, he is male, We don't know whether he's connected to any group. At this point, it seems that he acted alone. He was not known to either the Capitol Police or the Metropolitan Police. And when officers spoke to us here just a few minutes ago, they said they were not calling it a terrorism attack, but they were investigating at this point. They received, of course, a lot of questions about how this could have happened when the Capitol is under such heavy security, and only 3 months after that attack, that insurrection attack of the extremist rioters.
And in terms of the incident itself, is it over? Are they looking for anyone else, or is this seen to be over?
It seems to be over, Jamie. They said it did not look like an ongoing incident when we asked them. And they had put the Capitol buildings under lockdown, and just recently they lifted that lockdown, saying that the threat had been neutralized, although they are still going to be having tighter security, limiting access for people, and expanding the security perimeter.
As you say, just a couple of months after, 3 months nearly after the January the 6th events, what has the situation been like with security? Has it been pretty high all the way through?
Well, it has. There's been several perimeters of security fencing, extra National Guard troops brought in, and the whole sort of area around the Capitol building has been pretty tightly sealed off. But, you know, about a week or so ago, that started to come down, because although there had been some threats reported from chatter on social media from various groups and extremists, nothing actually happened. So they took down the outer perimeter of the security fencing about a week ago, and they opened up some of the streets around the Capitol that had been closed, and they started to send some of the National Guard soldiers home. When they were asked, they said their security posture at the moment was remaining the same, but I'm thinking that will probably be reevaluated after this incident.
And who was inside the building at the time?
Well, not lawmakers, or at least not many lawmakers, because the Capitol or Congress is in recess. So people who were inside would have been congressional aides, either doing work or working out getting their vaccinations, which is happening now. But some of them told us that they're very nervous about this, that even despite the security, still the Capitol building is a target and was attacked.
Barbara, thanks very much. Barbara Plett-Usher there in Washington.
About what we can accomplish. And you are absolutely right. That kind of rhetoric, ask not for you.
Economic uncertainty brought about by the pandemic is making couples think again about having bigger families, threatening a central pillar of Prime Minister Viktor Orban's plans to create a conservative middle class and to discourage immigration, as Nick Thorpe reports from Budapest.
Armin is 10 days old, born here in his parents' small living room in Budapest. He's that rare thing, a baby born in Europe, when many couples are putting off starting or increasing their families because of financial worries.
We didn't want to postpone having our second child just because of the pandemic. How we felt about it was, we'll leave it to Armin to arrive in his own good time.
Kinga's husband, András, also had a very personal reason for choosing to have the baby at home.
My father died of COVID barely a month ago. He went into hospital and caught COVID there. He caught the virus in hospital. Then he went for another reason. So that sort of clinched our decision to have our baby at home.
While Armin dozes in his dad's arms, his brother Ignaz, aged 2, plays with a police car. His parents both come from large families. András is the 8th of 10 children and hope to have several more. That's the kind of family planning which Families Minister Katalin Novak likes to hear.
Because if you ask a young person if they want to get married, if they want to have children, they are very positive about that. So the number of wished children, let's say, it is quite high. So what we have to do is to enable these young people to fulfill their wishes, their dreams.
Hungary now spends an astonishing 5% of its GDP, the highest in Europe, on tax incentives, gifts, loans, nursery places and other measures to convince couples to have that crucial second or third child they were hesitating about. But it's expensive and controversial because it's channeling the money to those who already have it, while the poor and vulnerable are abandoned, according to Dorothea Sikra, senior researcher at the Social Policy Institute.
The bulk of that money is spent on better off families, families who already are either wealthy or they have a stable financial situation, stable incomes. Whereas those families who are now in a really bad situation, not only because of COVID, but that, accelerated processes of unemployment, they simply get nothing.
So what happens now? Most couples I spoke to said that they made up their own minds about babies, though they're grateful for any help they can get.
Soon after we first met, the subject came up of how many children we'd like to have, realistically. And we just looked at each other and we both said, 6.
Yes, there wasn't much debate.
In the village of Verodce on the Danube, just north of Budapest, Panka and Peter play with their children in the sandpit. They've already taken up a $30,000 expecting a baby loan to buy the strip of land next door to build a bigger house for all the children they plan to have. Only couples who fail to have babies, get divorced or move abroad have to pay all the money back with interest. 2021 will be the crucial test, not only for the Orban government's family-centred policies, but for the economy as well, ahead of elections next year. The economic crisis caused by the pandemic threatens his whole economic model, based on high employment. If businesses fail, he will have adult voters, not their small children, to worry about.
And that was Nick Thorpe reporting from Budapest. Just a reminder, if you miss any live editions of the programme, you can always catch up with our podcast. We update it twice a day, 7 days a week. Just look for BBC NewsHour podcast in your search engine. You're listening to the BBC World Service. This is NewsHour, coming to you live from our studios in central London with James Kumarasamy.
Distribution of the BBC NewsHour in the U.S. is supported by Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, where research on how cancer cells get oxygen led to development of kidney cancer drugs and potential applications for heart disease and anemia. Dana-Farber.org/everywhere. And by Databricks. Thousands of enterprises use Databricks Lakehouse platform to simplify data and AI. Learn more at Databricks.
China, Russia, India, Brazil, South Africa, BRICS. Wow. You need it with your foot. It's not fair, bro. He's sipping a latte like while he's doing this. It's not right. It's not right.
Reminder of our top story this hour. Streets around the US Capitol building in Washington, D.C. are in lockdown after a motorist ran down 2 police officers, killing one of them. The death was announced by the acting chief of police, Yogananda Pittman.
Who's the real chief?
At this time, the suspect has been pronounced deceased. 2 U.S. Capitol police officers were transported to 2 different hospitals. And it is with a very, very heavy heart
the math the way I would.
that I announce one of our officers has succumbed to his injuries.
One other headline, US officials will travel to Vienna next week as negotiations on the 2015 nuclear deal take place between Iran and other world powers, but there will not be direct talks between Washington and Tehran.
Oh, they're not talking now. See, we're going to be passing notes and Facebook messages.
You're listening to the BBC World Service. This is NewsHour, coming to you live from London with James Kamarasamy. One of the world's greatest works of art, and one that has possibly been in the hands of more thieves than any other, has a new home. The Adoration of the Mystic Lamb, also known as the Ghent altarpiece by the Van Eyck brothers, is still in St Bavo's Cathedral in Ghent, but it is now inside a $36 million bulletproof glass case. The altarpiece was painted in 1432, and during its 588-year history, it's been nearly burned by Calvinists and looted several times by invaders, most recently by the Nazis.
If you destroy an entire generation of people's culture, it's as if they never existed.
We got company! Right, we gotta go!
That's what Hitler wants. And it's the one thing we can't allow.
George Clooney in the film The Monuments Men, in which the altarpiece plays a central role. Well, Ben De Vriend is the project leader for the new visitor experience. He described the altarpiece to my NewsHour colleague, Razia Iqbal.
You have to look at it, of course, through the eyes of medieval people. The first time they saw this painting, it must have been like they saw a miracle. I often made the comparison when people in the 50s or the 60s, they watched for the first time color television. Because before, and also from contemporary painters from the 15th century, painters never worked in 3D. They didn't care about the background. So this is really the first time that a painting has been painted in 3 dimensions. Also, the size of the painting was never done before. To have a painting so big, because it has about 12 square meters of surface with so many details, it was never done before. Jan van Eyck, he must have known that people wouldn't be able to see these details because you really need to zoom in. You can't do it with your eyes. Of course, now we can do it with the modern techniques. You can also see this on the internet, for example. There you can zoom in, and then you see these amazing details popping up that was never done before.
We're talking about a 12-panel oil painting with all kinds of details that are really quite sharp, even though we're talking about hundreds of years ago when they were done. Just tell us now where it actually stands inside the cathedral. We're speaking to you from inside the cathedral.
Yes. I have to explain, before, until 1 month ago, the Ghent altarpiece was placed quite close to the cathedral in a small chapel. But we really had problems there because the chapel was too small. People could get an audio guide, but people had a bad visitor experience. And we really decided that the virtuosity of Van Eyck, it didn't match that experience, so we needed to come up with a new project. And now the Ghent altarpiece is located in the most central chapel. It's called the Sacrament Chapel at the back of the cathedral.
And on the altarpiece itself, you know, we're talking about panels. It used to be closed, and so there are pictures on the outside as well as on the inside. But there is a kind of realism that is so true to life that facial blemishes are revealed. There are tiny jewels on the many crowns, and also details such as the chalice into which the sacrificial lamb's blood pours into. These are all extraordinarily rendered.
Yes. Yeah, and even so, I think the most amazing one is, and that got discovered during the restoration campaign that started in 2012. There's a room depicted in somewhere, a room in Ghent, and there you even see tiny spiders, because they also wanted not to show a perfect image, but you have to imagine that also in a 15th century house there were a lot of little spiders. So you even during the renovation we saw some tiny spiders coming out and their webs. Every time you look at it, you find new details that are really extraordinary.
This is an altarpiece that is not just deeply important in art historical terms, but it has had a terribly turbulent history, hasn't it?
I'm going to end up smoking this.
Yes. That's often something that the canon and also the bishops say, that it's a miracle that it still exists. And also, if you are standing here, it's the first time you visit it, you would be thinking that, oh, it has been here all the time, 600 years, nothing has happened with it. But the history is actually as surrealistic, as the details of the painting itself. It was taken by the French revolutionists to France. It was taken there with horse and a chariot. It got then a place in the Louvre. Afterwards, during World War I, it was taken to Germany. In World War II, it was taken by the Nazis to a salt mine in Austria, because the Nazis had the idea to come up with a super museum with all European art. So they took the Ghent altarpiece to this salt mine in Austria, where luckily it didn't explode, because when the Nazis knew they were losing the war, they had the idea to blow up this salt mine and all the art inside it. But then luckily a few brave men took the painting out.
And this, of course, the story that you're talking about is the one that features in the Hollywood film Monuments Men, starring George Clooney.
The Monuments Men, yeah. And then in the 19th century, because it was also at one time in history, the people from the cathedral, they didn't have enough money, so they decided to start.
Yes, up and down. We see you, dumbass. I comment every time you do.
So they decided to cut the panels in half.
I'm not trying hard. No, I'm not going to. Why would I? You're going to sit and watch anyway, apparently. I guess that was the point, which wasn't. This is this guy's big fucking huge hat. Up and down and up and down. And he'll do that for 45 minutes straight if I don't mention it. And then once I do, he'll kill the audio or whatever he's doing. This is the level of intelligence of a sex offender, to flip the fuck out over and over to get attention. And get mad that everybody's looking at them. You knew this was going to start when I rolled it. You knew it would start as soon as I laid the joint. This thing is going to flip the fuck out.
I'm just dealing with my poison, I can get it so woke. So woke, I'm just
I'm in excruciating pain.
Welcome to Mi'kmaq Matters, Welcome to Mi'kmaq Matters.
Damn, son, where'd you find...
Xavier.
Smoking will make your fingernails yellow. That probably works more effectively There's a very loud piece of equipment over there.
Damn, son, where'd you find this? Look at this. Yep.
Instrumental.
Straight out of Blitzburg, nigga. Saw we coming. Humble, baby. Yeah.
Hey, cruising down the street with my AR, strapped in the whip. We all trying to score. Better get low, cause we flip cars. Ride how the 10, we seen it from far. Cruising down the street with my AR, strapped in the whip. We all trying to score. Better get low, cause these hit hard. Strap how the 10, we seen it from far. I ain't gotta slide out the rap and blow real quick. I'ma hop out the whip. Cruise down street on free AR-15, got 50 in the clip. Can't run from this. Ain't no kicking and shoot through bricks. Four off the glass till donkey shit. Block full fat with the rubber grill. Chris don't really no clue. Don't make night quick cruise. The dick gets slipped on move. That makes me run away from this class, y'all. This class, y'all. And there is no DJ can put the competition to the
4, 3, 2, 1, and slap the track. Got 43 saved for the package. They get their views up and then they're taking advantage. We kill it for the inside, baby. Miscarriage for the cabbage. Wrestle the savage, get a bandage. Niggas could've managed. Suplex on the canvas. I'm Randy Savage. You know that's the work of art. Tell it work, my niggas slide when you wear the parts on parts. Off the hat that way. From the point there's a freezer with a card that slave. Don't watch my age, just watch when I pop my case. I fight engaged. When niggas wouldn't watch them ways. I'm not amazed at y'all. Talking Panthers, chop for Dre. That nigga, we would spot the place and drop the strays for this trap that I got in case. It's like a hurricane, that niggas gotta rock the place. So what my dudes now? It's like my dude they've been doing now. When you start, get it like a U-Haul and move round. Kids got my music in class, spreading the schools down. The demon killed Jesus, get some king of the Jews now. The shot blaster was blasphemous. Rip this piece off, Jesus what's Nazareth. You getting money, we gon' tax them all. We can slap the back and put nigga like a racquetball. Bike crash, nigga still rapping when I had cracked my job. Got a new strap, see the party I can practice on. You niggas make this easy, call Keezy. Niggas disrespecting their set, she get TT. Couldn't take a shit on this paper, it's not TP. Put my fucking arm up, told me to drink green tea. I gotta could've washed these bags. I got an AR in this hockey bag. See, that's the most basic. When I step out the matrix, try to give you a playlist. I put that on my handkerchief. I'm from a gang of Crips. Donkey Kong when they're banging off a banana clip. LL when a nigga getting that cannabis. Worst out whenever they beating niggas on cameras. We transport weight, it's grams. On a scale top, the word looks strong enough to bribe or have your belt product. Fuck house arrest, they go visit you with the bell cops. You're not home, I promise that you gon' see what that bell does. From the projects, then you gon' catch the concept. From 007, the rock collage in the complex.
Hello. This call is from the Tax Department of Canada Revenue Agency. The reason behind this call is that there is a case, a lawsuit, that is getting filed under your name. The moment you receive this message, I need you to get back to me on my department division number. That is 647-945-9549. I repeat, 647-945-9549. Now, if I don't hear a call from you, we will have to issue an arrest warrant under your name and get you arrested. So get back to me as soon as possible. Thank you.
Go fuck yourself.
I hope you have your offerings close, bundled tight, and in plain sight. As I tell you about the night when all the wooden Indians came to life. It was a night filled with mystery and the reliving of histories. It took centuries for this to be. My grandchild told this to me. They say the spirit responsible was hidden inside a jade dagger or knife on that night when all the wooden Indians came to life. Their eyes opened and they could see the future and the past of thee, could feel their blood move.
The Russians are vaccinating dogs. France, Germany, and Russia are part of an agreement that the UK is not part of the EU anymore, but Scotland might be.
Why she said it, I'ma get that spinach. I be sinning, I'm winning. They don't like it, yeah, I bet. I see the pain in their heart and their chest. Why she said it, I'ma get that spinach. I be sinning, I'm winning. They don't like it, yeah, I bet. I see the pain in their heart and their chest. I love the rain when it falls, yeah, I'm blessed. Took the fame and the cars and the jets. I had them thinking I was gone to the psych ward. I never left to live the life you would die for. Tell that hoe I can't save her, I'm no lifeguard. Maybe you can get the G, but I might charge. Pull up to the spot, they're like, who is that there? Hands up, give me the loot like a cashier. What you thought, are you dumb? I don't play shit. I killed you and your brother with the same clip. All that bullshit you've been talking, boys, ain't you? I'm a different man now, leave your face. Why she said it, I'ma get that spinach. I be sinning, I'm winning. They don't like it, yeah, I bet. I see the pain in their heart and their chest. Why she said it, I'ma get that spinach. I be sinning, I'm winning. They don't like it, yeah, I bet. I see the pain in their heart and their chest. Yo, versus spot, then I'm leaving unidentified. Just a rental, had to drop it off at Enterprise. Shell casings in the whip, had to check it twice. I think my OGs for that shit, they give good advice. Yeah, this about to be a genocide. These motherfuckers want me dead, but I can never die. I'm the reason why your wife said she met a guy. 2 minutes in a pusher just to get inside. Yeah. We are not the same kind. You gotta pay dues, I already paid twice. Y'all don't make moves, all you do is waste time. I'ma always be woke while you haters stay live. Why she said it, I'ma get that spinach. I be sinning, I'm winning. They don't like it, yeah, I bet. I see the pain in their heart and their chest. Why she said it, I'ma get that spinach. I be sinning, I'm winning. They don't like it, yeah, I bet. I see the pain in their heart and their chest.
Yeah, nous la gazelle, concours ange, yo dessiné pour le monde, quoi. C'est comme ça, oui, bah, yo fait. Them bullets fly by, when bullets fly by. What you gonna do when them bullets fly by? When bullets fly. Hey. Batman, 20 shoes on your back. Hey. Your watch is Batman 2019. Now wait, nigga, fuck that shit. Maybe they come back. Or no down. Hey. YG back from the tracks on my crack shit's wax on the stack. Niggas don't love you, that's a fact. Keep them back, no cheese. God bless me, no sneeze. Niggas see me and freeze. 40 no shit, he's got strapped to the slot. They moving like a stack. Relax, just rack. Put them in a box, no jack. Roll one deep, never need a pack. Hey. Niggas know me from north to the south. Never need no one. Make my own club. Southside, reach apart. Nigga, that's my road. Niggas selling drugs, man. I'm in a drought. They all know what I'm about. Stuck in bread, talk shit, catch slammed to the head. Off the shits, no meds. Never fuck on the red. Stay away from the beds. On the streets, no bed. Hey, deep water, I drink. I snow, no sled. I swamp, be dead. This day, I dread. Bitch gave me hit. See my strap, they fled. Hey, I know they said I don't be shit when I was in the ditch. No pussy, I'm rich. They low, don't switch. They solid one bitch. See the flick of the wrist. I'm on some shit. Talk shit, get hit. Big funk on me lit. I keep my stick, I let it flick.
This is the least amount of profit we've encountered recording a song so far.
Coming up the wood, I'm a tough motherfucker. Slumming with the sword, I'm a rough motherfucker. They don't wanna catch me at my best, but at my worst. And that's exactly why I gotta put them in the dirt. You
you should see is go to work. Watch me hit him where it hurts. Watch me fucking hit him first. Watch me put him in a hearse. Drinking blood and quench my thirst. Catch a charge with the reverse. This who cheated kinda cursed. FTP across my shirt. Yeah, fuck the population. Fuck your life and occupation. I'ma watch you run away and look like immigration.
Same grubby sweater since high school. Drugs out the vial, on fire, almost screens and vials. Survival of the fittest, I'm a walking pandemic. Try to take on me and do the jogging man with it. What's a champion scene without some sadness up in it? I know the world is ours, I'm just having a minute. Another dead man walking with a casket incentive. It's either a bucket or a habit I'm kicking. Conscience roll caller, is it cast in auditions? If you notice I ain't present, it's cause the past isn't finished.
Coming for the throat of anyone that is my enemy. Listen, little bitch, this is not what I pretend to be. Send an army, send your troops, send them in with camo suits. Come and catch me, make me pay. Ward boy till my dying day. Ward boy till my dying day. Ward boy being sealed away. Ward boy after I decay. I'm a fucking misfit with his fucking wrist slit. Hit you with my fist, bitch. Bring it red like Christmas. Death is on my wish list.
The headphones ain't tangled, then it's lost. Bunk ass AirPods, if they ain't listening, it's their loss. No caps, no strings attached, fucking weird flaws. Down dreams crash, how we share flaws. Give the empathy in my epitaph, epithet. You're my nemesis, yeah, I said that with emphasis. Ain't no common ground or no common sense. Fuck your comments, that's the consequence when you on the fence. Killing will, all my head is fair, I can't call them off. I can't call them dog. Shit, I'm polygon. Stay lifted and twisted like a fucking polygon. If you're feeling froggy, get knocked back to a polywall.
Swear you'll see the black dove, so don't push no more. When it comes to push and shove, I'll put you through the floor. Someone come and catch some smoke. I swear you'll be the one that choke. When I'm fucking an angry bitch, I'ma wipe out all your hope. I'ma smoke your fucking dope, cut you up like cantaloupe. Send you to the North Pole, inside of an envelope. Bloody up my suits again. Demons always play pretend. Cut them up with just a pen. I'm something you can't comprehend. Against me you cannot defend. Pain and fear you can't prevent. I'll make sure you feel suspense. Put you under the cement. Put you in the ground. We're talking down to a nihilist. Taking all these chemicals. I feel like I'm a scientist. Breaking my appliances. Anger with the sciences. That is what my style is. And evil is my stylist.
How you smoking Percy's and still Jackson the lighter thief? If you like the green shit, go full circle like a reef. Ain't scary. Nixon, Katy Perry, St. Jerry, Aviary, Hello, watch me blow, dead and buried. Revolutionary of the chicken theory. The pen should make the paper move, both are stationary. Can't sleep in my bed since you was up there. Got me fucked up, choosing tough love for the cynic. Basic ass living for a heart that's acidic. How am I supposed to judge if everyone's a critic?
Too long, they're disappointed by more. Local news or international news? I want to hear international news.
It's don't get close. You already know.
Their impression of the title, you haven't come in here and find those classics that you're not going to be able to find maybe on the service that you have subscribed to.
You know, when you alluded to that just a few moments ago, that you can access these movies, like where do you go for the hard copies of these things? I mean, who's still selling those? What do you go online and buy these on Kijiji? How do you access them?
Walmart.
Exactly. I mean, I spend a lot of time in front of my computer, a lot of time out hitting the pavement per se, and going from store to find different titles. And we've became very resourceful over the years of ways we can keep ourselves relevant and make it so that we can keep our customers wanting to come back and knowing that they can find these things. You'd be surprised at the different ways we find movies. So we also have people who donate movies to us constantly. So, I mean, we get boxes of movies in every week, and it's great. It's kind of like Christmas, and we're just waiting to see what we're going to get. And a lot of times people are sending me titles that we don't have on the floor, and so we can incorporate those into our stock. And now we have another movie we can offer somebody. So, I mean, it's just a passion for us to be able to figure out a way to make it work.
Yeah, you sound like a cinephile here. Now, tell me, by the way, when it comes to filing all of these things, if I've got it right, your filing system is rather unique and maybe a little out of step with modern technology, but nonetheless, tell me about your filing system because I hear it's legendary.
Oh, you know what? We have the wonderful IBM computers from 1992. Floppy disk, you name it, we still have it. And you know, there's something to say about retro technology. It works, and I'm from that generation that I actually know how to use that computer, so it's kind of nice. But no, you're old school around here. Everything is still very 90s when you walk in the door.
Do you have a reel-to-reel system?
We do not. Well, I think what you're talking about is our actual computer system. That is, that's how we back up our tapes, so all of our transactions. So it's kind of funny because we're not internet-based, and so everything is stored on the computer, and we actually do have the tapes that you put in that are like old school cassette tapes that you put into the computer, and it backs up all of our files.
Some of the ones that actually look like the voice cassette.
It's a trip back in time. Yeah, Bend, Oregon, the town that time forgot. By the way, what does it cost to rent a movie these days? It's been so long.
So nothing has changed. It's still $13.99 for the new releases and 99 cents for the old ones.
That you said nothing has changed.
Okay.
You want to go to the movie theaters,
almost like, you know, you go to the Masters and you can buy a sandwich for $2. They haven't changed for like 40 years. It's still this, because the nostalgia, you know, the trip down memory lane. Well, this was a fabulous one, and looking very much forward to seeing the Netflix documentary on the last blockbuster, because it's right there in Bend, Oregon, and its general manager is Sandy Harding. Sandy, really great to talk to you this afternoon.
Well, thank you for having us back in your program. We appreciate the support.
All right, keep it going. There you go. Well, the last blockbuster. I like that, when there were people, you know, who are holdouts against the inexorable march of technology and time.
Oh no, I checked my diamond.
Spence will replace it.
Oh no, I cracked my diamond.
Spence will replace it.
Oh no, I lost my diamond.
Spence diamonds.
After a thorough investigation by Johnny Dollar.
Refers to the debate over whether Democrats willing the state and local tax deduction that was imposed in President Trump's 2017 package. You can only deduct $10,000 of your state and local taxes. And so for some people in blue states who call Democratic Congress members a lot, that's a big concern.
We have a 20% women, and if we look just at the scientist, physicist, and engineer, then the percentage dropped to some 15-16%. The number tells us that there is still a way to go.
I believe it's very important for the United Nations to tackle like equal opportunities and STEAM, because it's a global perspective. For example, like making the girls stay at home to take care of the siblings or cook at very young, like they get an education as well. Just having a chance to do something opens a lot of doors. All it takes is your creativity. Once you can mold that into something real and something that's sustainable, then the future is just going to keep growing from there. Like, even if you're not the first person to do it, you're leaving a blueprint for the next people to add on to it.
The world is evolving and a lot of female scientists are coming up. Therefore, we'll have a balance between the genders, and it will not be ruled by males only. We'll have women power as well.
My message to young girls and even older girls all around the world is that don't let anyone tell you that math and science is not for you. You have unlimited possibilities in front of you. You can do it.
We hate infrastructure because Joe Biden likes it. I'm a
1-5900 or employmentlawyer.ca.
I mean, Republicans voted against it, but they didn't seem very eager to talk about why they didn't like the bill. Republicans are sort of elsewhere, well away from these budget issues. What do you expect to see in terms of Republican response on this bill if Democrats are intent on doing it in more or less this form and doing, as you describe, an essential?
a wild lynx was going through a farmer's chicken coop, and the farmer caught it and literally grabbed it by the scruff of the neck and read it to riot act. Peter Irwin is, not Peter Irwin, rather Chris Paulson is the farmer in BC who grabbed the lynx, and he's with us on the line this afternoon. Chris, good to have you here on the Oakley Show in Toronto. Good afternoon.
Hi, John.
Goes back to stingray.
So, Chris, this lynx, tell me about this encounter. I mean, because these wild animals are pretty elusive. You rarely see them in the wilds, but you encountered him. Was he raiding your chicken coop? And to what extent?
Yeah, he was. And we've seen them there. We're out here on the unceded territory of the First Nations, the Wet'suwet'en First Nation, and we basically live in the forest. And we have property that runs out in the back, and we have a German Shepherd who kind of patrols the place, and I think she has a really good relationship with the wild animals, and they got a good understanding of not coming in the yard. But she was, I think by the look of the animal tracks that come in the night, they all know exactly when she is absent, and they waltz in there. And I think the rabbit population is going down, which is the main food source for the lynx. And I was in the house, and my family was up feeding our horses, and I heard a huge commotion in the hen house. So I run down there. I mean, they make quite a commotion when they lay an egg too. So, but as I went down there, they were all just flying out of the chicken house, and they're sort of free range, and the chicken house is right beside our big greenhouse, which we open up for them in the wintertime, and they can go in there and dust and stuff, and it's a little bit warmer in the greenhouse in the wintertime. But yeah, there was a real commotion, and I went down there, and I had a look inside, and here there was a little lynx in there. He'd already killed 2 that were lying there, and so I was surprised I couldn't figure out why. Like, come on, buddy, just take one of those chickens and get out of here, and we'll reestablish our boundaries with you. And he wasn't going. He looked at me, and then he kind of looked at me, and then he just go after more chickens, right? He was having a heyday in there, probably really hungry. Ow! And so I tried to shoo him out of there, couldn't get him out of there, and so I kind of did what I'd probably do with a dog trying to
that dog never stood alive.
Reached down, picked him up, and held him up like a cat would their kitten, or the dog, the mother dog with their pups, and he had a big mouth full of feathers, and he kind of looked very perturbed, but didn't want to give up what he had in his mouth, and so he just had to put up with it, and he didn't fight at all. I thought, I didn't feel in danger, because I thought if he really put on a struggle, I'd just throw him out the door and away he'd go. But anyway, yeah.
I've seen the video. Who, by the way, took the video?
Well, I did, and I didn't intend for it to go international. I had no idea that such a thing would go like that, but I took it because I wanted to show my family, and actually just before he called, I had this sort of memory of the dogs. And always as a kid, we had the chicken coop was sold. They were pretty much free range, but we'd get a new puppy or a new dog for the farm, and they'd always have to learn to get along with the chickens. And I had this memory that flooded back to me of actually doing almost exactly the same thing with the dogs. If they went down there, and so you'd grab them by the scruff of the neck, and it was I think it was a way better connection to the dog than even a collar, because a collar is sort of more arbitrary, whereas grabbing them by the scruff of the neck, it's more of a primal connection that they have with their mothers, right? So, and you can do some pretty good non-violent training with them. So I think that's maybe where it was quite a spontaneous reaction, but it worked. And I don't know if hopefully I'll never have another opportunity to do that, but I don't think I'd recommend it to anybody either, because they're quite different from a cougar. No, a lot smaller, of course, and but they're also, like you said, elusive. That's really good. They're really shy. They're really elusive, and they're really focused on prey.
And I've never heard of any lynx being a threat to any human, unless maybe they're rabid or something like that. But yeah,
well, but they can still do damage. I mean, they got sharp enough teeth and claws, those big mitts that they have. But this one looked like, in the video anyway, you got him by the scruff of the neck, and you're kind of giving him a little bit of a stern lecture, and he's just sitting there like a contrite kitten. He's kind of passive, being held in. It sort of defies what we would think of as an animal in the wild who's, feeling that maybe it's endangered and it would lash out. But he was taking his medicine as you were upbraiding him. And in fact, you counted your chickens. How many he had taken in total? 2? Was that right?
Yeah, he killed 2.
Yeah. I see. So,
and totally our own fault, because we got free-range chickens and stuff too, right? So, and that's what you got to kind of manage that. So, I don't think it's fair to shoot or kill all the wildlife that come in and threaten your livestock unless you've got a good farm plan and a management plan that can create sort of a space for everyone, right?
Yeah, a boundary. But the cat was only doing what its innate nature tells it to do. It was hunting for prey that it thought was accessible, especially if it's hungry and the rabbits are scarce. So what did you do then? Where is the lynx? You relocate that. What about the chickens?
Well, that's kind of where I think I made some really big errors that I've really have to take responsibility for and think about, because we relocated them, and we threw them the chicken.
Well, you did.
A peace offering. Well, we did, yeah, sort of a peace offering. But the biggest mistake is that we relocated them, and basically that's wrong. I had it in my head that, the lynx isn't a threat to anybody, but I'm sure he's in somebody else's backyard trying to their chickens now, and so I just kind of, and that's where the wildlife laws and stuff are really need to be upheld and stuff, because if you think about a bear, if you do that with a bear or something, I mean, those guys travel 30K a day if they're trying to find new territory or whatever, and so it's really hard to relocate them, and so you have to leave that up to the conservation officers and stuff too.
All right, but you gave him a parting gift. You gave him the 2 chickens that he had killed, and so he had a little bit of a meal, a bit of a bonus.
Yeah.
And hopefully he doesn't come back because he learned his lesson when you read him the Riot Act. I just found it was a wonderful story, and I appreciate you sharing it with us, Chris. I mean, not everybody gets access to, say, the outdoors and wilderness, and you're living it there at large in northwestern BC and holding that cat. It's a wonderful visual. If people have a chance, check out that particular video that you taped while you were holding him. I appreciate your time, and it was good to meet your acquaintance here on the other side of the country. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks for sharing thanks for putting the story out there. I appreciate it.
You got it. Chris Paulson, farmer in BC, who grabbed the lynx after the lynx had grabbed a couple of his chickens.
Prioritizing your family's health is important, and getting an annual eye exam is an essential part of it. So visit your neighborhood Pearl Vision.
They have cashless credit opportunities, and the transactions are all through the financial system, which creates opportunity for the farmers to build their own capital for expansion and diversification.
With increased availability of good quality cassava, new business opportunities are opening up, like this privately owned processing plant, which transforms locally sourced cassava tubers into starch. With more dependable markets and better incomes, many young people now see a future in agriculture.
All the groups see the difference from what we have been doing before. It now means we motivate most of them, people that are farming beside us, so far as they are saying what we are doing that is different from what they are doing, and the result is different from their own. Many of them are now coming.
Over the years, Johnson has expanded his business. He now employs 12 workers and has invested in 2 lorries to deliver his wares. With the proceeds, he has built a house for his young family.
there is money in farming. If you do it, if you follow good agronomic practices, I'm very sure you are going to make it.
To find a salon near you. Your stylish self is waiting.
Hello there, I'm Wolfgang Klein, Portfolio Manager with Canaccord's Annuity Wealth Management and host of Hi-Fi Radio right here on Global News Radio 640 Toronto. The good news, our show has been moved to 7 p.m. Saturday nights. Yep, we're moving up, as are our clients. Look, we're getting through COVID-19 and we're going to get through the next crisis. Managing money is simple, but it's not easy. The not easy part requires process. It requires foresight. It requires guidance, and it requires a steady hand. And that's what Jack and I provide. Listen to our show and check us out at wolfgangklein.com.
Hey, Cuckoo, what do you tell a teenager about cannabis?
15 years, beginning in 1947, when the People's Liberation Army was embroiled in civil war with the Kuomintang, or Nationalist Party, led by Chiang Kai-shek. Today, in CRI's Alligator Literature, Ian Reid narrates part 10 of Mao Zedong's Man Not God, in which Li Yanchao recounts how Mao's name came to be deified. Enjoy.
One winter night in 1953, Mao was returning from a meeting in Huairen Hall in Zhongnanhai. I was following closely behind him, carrying an armful of papers. When we were a few steps away from his office, snowflakes, blown by a gust of wind, began to drift from the sky. Mao halted. Looking at the leaden sky, he said to me, "How about a walk? A 10-minute walk? You keep the time." Mao liked a walk, but he was so busy that he could only spare 10 minutes each time, so he would ask me to keep the time. That night, he walked faster than usual in the yard, and as the snow fell more heavily, his movement gained in strength and speed. Swaying his shoulders, turning his body from side to side, and swinging his hands to catch the snow, he might have been dancing. "Time?" he inquired. 8 minutes, I answered in all seriousness. In fact, he had been walking for more than 10 minutes. I didn't want to dampen his spirits. So Mao went on dancing for another 10 minutes. Which was unusual, for ordinarily his sense of time was accurate to them.
I guess, that would be proper attire for Florida. When it's cold, it's -0 now in New York City. He got himself into a bit of trouble. Let's find out all about it. The Naked Cowboy back in the Oakley Show this afternoon at Global News Radio 640 Toronto. Naked Cowboy, are you still in Florida?
Yes, sir. Now I'm down at Siesta Key. I, thank goodness, only had to stay in jail for about 40 hours, which was very lonely and boring and depressing, but I got out. Now I went straight to Key West and Siesta Key, and I'm doing spring break now, and I'm going back to Daytona on Friday. I'll go through the whole rigmarole again. This time I won't even let them give me $1, dang it. I'm not leaving. I'm not stopping.
All right, easy. Let's find out why you were arrested. What happened?
Well, I was just doing what I always do. Nothing unique about it. Just working, and I guess after 21 years of doing it, now they have a new ordinance, with regarding, they call it panhandling, but of course not panhandling. That's like begging for money, which is going on every corner. I understand the reason for not wanting that. But, now that I've been in jail and I sat there and saw how these people, I mean, it's very tough. A day is a long time. No TV, no radio, no clock. Nobody cares whatsoever about you. So whatever. The point is, these guys that, beg for money, I have a little more sympathy for them now. But I don't do that. And that's basically what they were trying to say I was doing. So it's kind of a money without stealing something. And when I got to the...
I was just going to ask, did they make you get dressed in jail?
No, in fact, when I was arrested, you can Google the Naked Cowboy arrest video. I mean, the lady was really aggressive, threw me against the car, and actually broke my guitar in half. So when I got to the actual cell, I was in my underwear, boots, and hat, which didn't deter them from telling me to take out my boots, my socks, my underwear, turn around, spread your cheeks, cough 3 times, lift it in the front, check your mouthpiece, give you the uniform, and then sit on a wooden mat the entire night and then hours. I mean, it wasn't easy. It was tough. But at the end of the day, we got world news. My wife was able to get my phone, which was the issue, so she was able to reach our contacts and not be left on the street alone.
This was a black
and now we have a pro bono attorney taking care of the criminal part to get rid of what I pled guilty to, which was just the resisting arrest without violence. Basically, when I got there, they were still pushing me around, and I was just mumbling under my breath. And they were just getting mad at everything I did. So they handcuffed me again, put me in a little cage before I went to my wooden bed. It was an ordeal, but at the end of the day, like I said, it's all good. All good, no big deal.
Well, Howard, you got a good attitude about things. It sounds like maybe these cops were a little too authoritarian. Maybe they're getting burned out, with all of the people they confront during COVID and with spring break and all the rest.
This guy wears shorts, right?
Exactly. I mean, there were missteps probably on both sides, but the way they handled things, I wasn't read my rights, and I was basically never even arrested.
You said they made him take off his underwear. He's wearing underwear.
Well, yeah, I guess being in jail, having to drop your shorts, that's part of your uniform. The boots and the shorts, you have to take those off.
When they made me take my underwear off, I really felt naked.
Right, you're the semi-naked cowboy, but now you've lived up to the advanced billing. We have the naked cowboy, a.k.a. Robert Burke, on the line with us. So you're down in Florida. This is something that you do as a rule every year, I guess. It's Bike Week in Daytona, so you were down for that. And but now you find yourself in Siesta Key, in the Keys. Tell me,
all these Jesus books, these little booklets.
They broke your guitar as well in the arrest?
Oh, of course they did.
Well, she didn't do it intentionally, but basically they handcuffed me, put me against the car. Then a female officer came over, a little stocky and aggressive type, and like every single thing I said, trying to be flattering, was unflattering coming from me, I guess. I don't know. So she got a little upset with me. I don't know. It just was what it was. And then, like I said, I had my phone in my boot. And when I realized they're really going to take me out of there, I'm like, well, my wife has to have my phone from my boot. And she said, no, don't talk to your wife. He's being arrested. I'm like, I'm not being arrested. You haven't read me my rights. She needs to take my phone. I'm just looking out for her. Do whatever you want to me. But she's got to have my phone. And when my wife was trying to get my phone, she threw me against the car. I mean, she twisted me around like a pretzel. She was stronger than she looked. And in that scuffle, my guitar broke in half. There's a lot of funny videos on things where I'm like, you broke my effing guitar. I mean, when I finally realized it was just funny. I mean, I kept getting knocked around, and I just kept getting a little agitated.
So who was taking the video? Were they tourists?
Well, they took them about 15 minutes to get me in the car, and all this stuff happened, and I was literally taking pictures with everybody. Like the police report shows that it even says they were flocking to me, taking pictures and voluntarily putting money in the guitar. And I said, I don't ask for money.
That's possible.
It was like a bogus charge that led to another charge that was more legitimate, but again, we already have an attorney. He's already got to wipe off that little, it's just a misdemeanor. I have a perfect record. And they're going
to
file a
guitar in your cell
and take their pants off them, I mean, it is what it is. Like I said, I'm not that aggressive.
What are you going to file a civil suit? I guess for, I don't know, what would the charge, or what would the actual...
I'm not my attorney. Unlawful arrest, assault, it'll be the kind of thing that'll allow panhandlers, or how do you say, impoverished people who need money to go in front of the stores where everybody is wonderful and successful, and at least give them a chance to try to ask for money without being thrown in to a jail cell where they don't have the resource. I don't know. I have a different perspective on that, man. I usually say, get these homeless people out of here. Now I'm like, hey, give them a break. It's hell in there.
Right. So they were treating you like a common vagrant, even though they didn't recognize your stature as the naked cowboy from Times Square down Florida way. I guess they just wanted to flex their muscles. Anyway, on that note, you got, what? I mean, are you coming back to New York City at all, or are you just riding out the winter like a lot of snowbirds?
No. This is just, I left, I don't know, I don't know. I took 3 days to get here. I was in Daytona Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Now I'm here Monday, Tuesday. I'm here till Thursday. I'm going to drive back to Daytona and do it again Friday, Saturday, Sunday. This time I'm just going to cover the money hole, and that way there'll be no disputing it whatsoever. I'm not taking money, whatever. But I'm going to work Daytona because it's the busiest place on earth right now. And then I'll get back to Cincinnati, New York City on the 17th.
I was going to say, you got to get your city straight. Cincinnati, New York City.
Well, I'm from Cincinnati, and we thought about going there too. And every year for 21 years, I've done the Mardi Gras, then Panama City Beach, then Spring Break, then Daytona. But this year, because of the corona, I wasn't able to get, so I have this exact same thing I've done for years, but it's a little, it's not like it normally is just because the corona kind of changed things around a little bit.
Where's the best location for making money this way? And again, people putting money in the guitar hole there. That's why they cited you for panhandling. You didn't go and ask for the money. They were slipping it into your guitar between the strings. But listen, which city do you find to be the best, the most lucrative for whatever it is you're doing?
For hundreds of dollars.
Well, on a whole, it'd be New York City, no question. I generally do about $150,000 a year just to the guitar. That's playing every day. But like again, right now, even if New York had not been shut down by Corona, destroyed by de Blasio, Cuomo, but that had not happened, still Daytona at this time of year because it's cold. It's not that New York City isn't busy. It's that when it's 30 degrees, you can't stay out as long as you normally would. You're working like 3 30-minute periods as opposed to coming down here, which is twice as busy, and you can stay out all day. So. Then you got the travel, you got the hotels, you got, it doesn't matter. We make our money off of Naked Cowboy Oysters. That's our #1 product from the Long Island, Blue Island Oyster Company. On the Long Island Sound oysters are all Naked Cowboys now. Has been for about 15 years.
Good for you. How about,
I get my money, I get checks in the mail whether I work or not from Naked Cowboy Oysters, Naked Cowboy Scallops, Naked Cowboy Wines, the Sauvignon Blanc, and the Viognier from Naked Winery. We have books, we have a CD, we do endorsement deals. I don't really need to make money. This is the way I've always made money, initially, but at this point, I don't stress that. I'm really just happy to entertain lots of people and have fun. After being alone in New York City for, 4 months and having no one acting like I'm anything special at all, I can still maintain it without the attention, but having all the people now, I was like, I got down there, I'm like, I'm in heaven. This is the greatest thing ever. I'm getting all this attention, having fun, and tracking people. I was in my element. So when they told me I had to leave, it was just like, no, but wait. It was
right. Being banished.
So it became a big problem, and it's a big problem for them now. And they're releasing body cam footage and trying to defend themselves.
Wow. It really turned into a big hot mess. But listen, you getting a new guitar, by the way?
Actually, I don't know the company yet. My manager just called me today that I was in CST on the beach. But apparently there's someone up in Daytona who's going to donate a guitar. And there's 2, what do they call it, GoFundMe campaigns. And they're taking care of my legal fees and my guitar expense, so that's all kinds of stuff. Now money's flying all over the place. You get I did a birthday cards, 4th of July cards with American greetings a while ago. Now they're re-upping, so I'm just saying, there's all kinds of things, And when
you're a one-man enterprise. Listen,
they don't care.
We're going to follow this, as we followed you from New York down to Florida, found you there, and we'll see when you get back to your own stomping grounds in Times Square. But good to get an update. Nice to see that, it didn't take too much out of you going into the Who's Gal with your underwear and boots removed. Oh, geez. I can only see that site sort of for a moment, and then let's talk again down the road. Naked Cowboy, all the best you're going forward, and good luck while you're still down in Florida. All the best.
The psychotherapist, right?
Thank you very much. Nice to talk to you again.
You got it, Robert Burke. There he is, the Naked Cowboy from Times Square. You ever see the dude? Yeah. He's, as I say, iconic. Right in the heart of the Big Apple.
Order Pizzaville's Pizza and Wing Special. 1 large, 3-topping pizza and 8 wings, or boneless chicken poppers, only $21.99. Contactless delivery available when you order and prepay online at pizzaville.ca or on the Pizzaville app.
Who are you? Max, professional dream coach. Where am I? Inside your dream helicopter. And
transition to proof of testing or vaccination status. But I want to be very
go snorkeling in my private cove. That was one wild ride. Friday's Lotomax jackpot is an estimated $15 million. Why dream to the min when you can dream to the max?
It's about time for a refresh. Regain momentum. Reconnect with your customers. Reach new ones. Whether they're listening, watching, or clicking, we're here to help you press refresh on your business. CourseCreative.ca.
Rogers Days to Save is on now. For a limited time, get exclusive savings on the latest and greatest devices. Act fast because these deals won't last long.
Fuck. That's indication of background.
Elle a préféré que j'aille en mariage. Je veux aussi conseiller les mères d'enfants de ne pas envoyer leurs enfants en mariage.
This is the John Oakley Show on Global News Radio 640 Toronto.
A cover-up is underway. Exposing yourself and possibly others to toxic contamination.
Oh, toxic contamination. Are we back in that? You read my report. Explain the disappearance of Max Fennick.
Your report is not the subject of this inquiry.
I have further evidence to support my conclusions. X-rays taken while Mr. Fennick was institutionalized show an object lodged in his cerebellum.
That is irrelevant, Agent Mulder.
The man was abducted. We all know it. Everybody in this room knows it.
If this is about TV or a movie, I'll be upset. I'm so upset.
The St. Lawrence Agency in Florida, whose operator Michael St. Lawrence has joined us here on the Oakley Show to explain all. Michael, how you doing this afternoon?
There's Great Lakes in Africa, there's St. Lawrence in Florida.
Well, it's our pleasure. So you're offering alien abduction insurance, are you? Tell us what this is about.
We'll give it, what, 3.5?
Well, we've been offering a $10 million alien abduction insurance policy since 1987. And we have policy holders all over the world and a lot in Canada, I might add.
And so I guess because there's a palpable sense that you might get abducted by an alien, so they want to cover their ass, so to speak. So what's the premium costing them, or what's it cover?
Well, it's a single lifetime premium of $19.95 if you get a digital copy, or $24.95 if we send you a paper copy. And it's a lifetime premium that you're covered for the rest of your life. Let me see, the policies themselves, you want to hear some of the terms and conditions?
Yeah, please.
Okay, let me move over to another computer. You can tell I'm an old man cancer. Okay.
Well, are you covered yourself, by the way?
I do have reincarnation insurance, yes.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good. All right.
What does that mean, though?
Okay, and I have.
Well, hang on. In the event that you are reincarnated, or in the event that you're not, which makes it?
I think all of us want to come back with a silver spoon in our mouth. It's a $10 million policy. All you have to do is prove who you used to be. And so far, that's been difficult.
Yeah, well, that's surprising. All right, tell us then what this actually covers. You've given us some indication that this is, taken off, and you've got people here in Canada too. So what's in the fine print?
Okay, I should tell you that most people do not buy this for themselves, but they buy it for a friend or a relative that might have some interest in the UFO phenomenon and stuff like that, for a birthday gift or for Christmas. Usually, the person that buys the policy, let's say you're a producer, you make the policy out to him, but you would be the beneficiary, the person that actually paid the money for it.
Yeah, it's like sex toys. Okay. You're never buying it for yourself, right?
Right. All right, let me just give you some of the terms. First, we have dimensional coverage. Includes any multi-dimension joyrides. Sometimes the aliens want to take you for a little sightseeing tour, you know what I mean?
Yeah, being taken for a ride is a kind of an interesting turn of phrase, but go ahead.
It is, and we've got medical coverage, includes all outpatient psychiatric care. So if you should get abducted, there's a readjustment period, and we want to cover that. And we have sarcasm coverage is limited to immediate family members.
How many of these emailed out to
Ontario sarcasm originates there anyway, so we cover that.
And so forth.
And then we have a double indemnity coverage in the sum of $20 million. A, if the aliens insist on conjugal visits.
Oh, jeez. Yeah. Yeah, you'd want to deter that. Okay. Let's just say it involves a probe of sorts. What?
Well, everybody asks me if there's a probe, and we don't cover the probe thing, but I did have a Ask the Anonymous Alien about 20 years ago, and some guy wrote to me and said, my boss has been walking around the office like he's got something stuck up his butt for about 10 years. He wanted to know if we would cover it. And I said, no, we wouldn't, but tell them the aliens they want the probe back.
Okay. Maybe it was the aperture that you should have covered. And so this is the kind of stuff, I mean, you've got it all in fine print and people get this coverage, they take it out. Any claimants so far?
Yes, we've actually approved 2 claims, actually both of them from New York State. One was a cab driver in upstate New York, looked just like, who's the guy, the scientist?
I need insurance against radioactive.
Carl Sagan?
Alligators, piranhas, and
theory of
turtles.
Relativity.
Oh, Einstein.
Einstein.
Very specific problem.
I gotta forget him. He's going to be dead when I say
solution.
Anyway, he looked identical to Albert Einstein. He was only about 40 years old.
Wow.
He really truly
I'd like to be able to type into
thought
the
he had been
computer
abducted. And he
combine
had,
sewer outflows and
usually
find
we have to get to prove it in our policy. You have to get a signature of an onboard alien. It can't be, one of the leaders of the ship, you know. And we waived that because he had tangible evidence that was inspected by our claims department head, Mr. McLean, who has no credentials whatsoever, but so far he's never made a mistake.
Right.
And it turned out that he had an implant that was in his body that was taken out before this person from MIT talked to the home McLean.
Right.
And he said that the evidence that came out of his body was not made of any earthly substance. So that was kind of like tangible proof, you know?
I was sure. The other guy's boss had an implant too, didn't he?
The other guy's boss. In a way.
Well, I guess, just trying to be consistent here with, because I like to see that, insurance claims are actually validated and lived up to. A lot of times, you'll pay for the premium, and then when it comes time to make a claim, they abandon you. And that's not your style.
That's exactly what I want to tell you. One critical thing is you can't get our policy if you don't get our policy.
I get charged with deducting somebody.
Oh, yeah, okay. I like that.
We do pay the $10 million if you can prove it. In this particular, and another one, we've been paying $1 a year for quite some time.
Well, that could get expensive. Wait a minute, it takes us back to the whole reincarnation thing. And if that were to happen, and this guy, ad infinitum keeps reincarnating, you may have to pay out large.
I hope they don't tax those when we come back. That wouldn't be fair, would it?
Well, they'll get you coming and going, trust me.
Really?
Several ways to set.
Yeah, I want to make sure that I get that out. We do pay the $10 million, and it's at $1 a year for 10 million years. And so far, we've had no one complain. Okay, we didn't have the Texas Department of Insurance investigate us back in the 90s. And it wasn't for alien abduction. It was for asteroid insurance that we have.
Well, here it is, the alien abduction insurance. Don't leave Earth without it. I think that's a pretty catchy phrase, and certainly it gives a lot of people reason to be feel secure. In the event that you were to ever be taken aboard the mothership, you've been covered here by the St. Lawrence Agency in Florida. Michael St. Lawrence, this is great stuff. We'll have to reconnect again down the road, and you'll just have to update the file for us when we do that. All right?
Okay, I've got something I want to talk to you about monoliths if you want to get back to me sometime.
Ooh, now, you see, that's called a hook. You put the bait in, you set the bait, and we will get back to you then on the monoliths, because I know they've been making the news of late, showing up in the strangest of places, and don't let the cat out of the bag. I mean, this gold has to wait. We'll show eternal patience here, and we'll come back and reconnect on the issue of monoliths, all right? I promise.
I think you'll feel better for doing it. Okay?
I know, like that scientist guy, the one with the frizzy hair. Oh, Einstein, that's the guy. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And it's also UFO2001.com if you want a policy. Good on you. There he is, Michael St. Lawrence, operator of the St. Lawrence Agency in Florida. Tom's Place is once again open for in-store shopping. Welcome back. Welcome inside Tom's Place, where we can once again...
amount of time we've had it tested, and over 2.5 million doses a day of the vaccines are getting administered into people's arms, giving us a much needed light at the end of the tunnel. I don't think all this would have been possible without the work of America's researchers and pharmaceutical companies, scientists, and yes, even Operation Warp Speed, which was the project started in the last administration to develop and bring to fruition an efficacious COVID-19 vaccine. Today, we've got not just one, but 3 effective vaccines. That's something I think we all should be excited about. Christy Nembo, what's your rant?
China has one, so we got to have 2 plus more.
On a not so hopeful note,
At first, things are very quiet. And then some birds show up, looking like they've spotted something. They find several sea lions hunting for breakfast.
What type of guns are they using? Black guns.
That was so cool. They're unbelievable. Their agility and their ability to move is crazy.
Dolphins are curious as to what's going on and accompany the boat. Marlins out there somewhere. They should be hunting right now. But this season, they haven't been seen very much. Valentina Cochran works with the Nakawe Project, a non-profit that backs research into marine life and promotes ecotourism as an alternative source of income to fishing for local communities. She wants to see if there are any traces of marlin eggs.
If they spawn here, that means this area is of great importance. It would be an important argument in favor of declaring it a conservation zone.
This helping the Nakawe Project promote. That's when members of the public help conduct research. Valentina retrieves a sample of water thick with jelly-like plankton.
I'm gonna put it on. Okay, who wants to take some sample to drink?
This research is financed with the money citizen scientists pay to take part in such expeditions, about 2,000 euros each. That's about twice the price of a regular tourist expedition.
I love it. I think it's really cool to be out in nature and to be actually contributing this beautiful bay, that there's conservation efforts and helping to understand the population, the fish populations, and what we can do to protect it. It's better than just going on a vacation.
Back on land, they study their samples under the microscope. The ocean is packed with tiny creatures. Yet overfishing means that the striped marlin could soon be declared an endangered species.
We have to start protecting them right now so they don't go the way of tuna or sharks.
Los atunes, por ejemplo, los tiburones.
The next morning, a party of tourists sets off on a catch-and-release fishing competition. This kind of tourism is gaining ground in Baja California. It's considered less destructive than commercial or regular recreational fishing. But catch and release can still be fatal, as we later see for ourselves. Melesio is skipper on Ben's boat. He's lived from fishing for most of his life, but no longer. He says commercial trawlers catch way too many marlin as bycatch.
Over time, you can drive a species to extinction that way. If no restrictions are enforced, it's very tempting to catch more than you're permitted to.
He says the ocean may be teeming with life, but we should only take what we absolutely need. He's now a fan of ecotourism and says it provides him with a good living and helps conserve local biodiversity. The expedition soon chances upon more action in the ocean. Seals and dolphins are busy hunting. Then some whales show up.
This animal is so much larger than you, but at the same time, it's allowing you in its space. And so it's that beauty and awe of actually getting to watch them in their natural habitat.
Bites you in the head and you die.
And a marlin makes a brief appearance.
I'm happy. This is awesome.
The boats with the tourists are heading back to harbor. They caught a fish, a marlin. They had spent an hour hunting it. Then it died by mistake, they say.
It swallowed a hook and hurt itself. We were going to catch and release it, but then we couldn't.
Valentina asks for its entrails, so its death wasn't entirely in vain. They could help her research. She hopes to present her first findings in 2 years' time.
We have killed this year after one died in January's riot. Police say today's attack does not appear related to terrorism nor to any particular member of Congress, which is on recess this week. Sagar Magani, Washington.
Transat AT is considering its options after a deal that would have seen Canada's largest airline acquire its smaller travel rival officially died today, with word that Air Canada has come to a mutual agreement with Transat to terminate their planned merger. Both companies released statements announcing the termination of the $190 million deal initiated more than 2 years ago, an amendment due to the weight of the COVID-19 pandemic on the transportation sector. The end of the deal comes after Air Canada and the tour company that operates Air Transat were advised by the European Commission that it would not be approving the transaction. Quebec is reporting its highest number of new daily COVID-19 cases since January, with 1,314 new infections and 5 additional deaths. The province's Public Health Institute says the majority of the new cases likely involve variants, noting 57.1% of screening tests for the new strains over the past week have been positive. Canada and other G7 nations are denouncing what they describe as human rights violations in Ethiopia.
Foreign Affairs Minister Marc Garneau and his counterparts from France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the United Kingdom, and the U.S. are calling for immediate access for humanitarian aid groups in the conflict-ridden Tigray region. A joint statement denounces reports of mass civilian killings, sexual and gender-based violence, and the forced displacement of thousands of local residents and Eritrean refugees living there. Ethiopia declared war on the semi-autonomous region in November. Emily Jabeski, The Canadian Press.
And an American reality show cast member has pleaded not guilty to criminal charges stemming from a telemarketing scheme.
On The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, Jennifer Shaw has bragged about spending $50,000 a month. She pleaded not guilty to criminal charges that suggested her lavish life has been funded through fraud. Shaw and her assistant were charged with conspiring to engage in a wide-ranging telemarketing scheme that federal prosecutors said defrauded thousands of elderly victims. And they put her at the highest level of the scheme, with at least $5 million in illicit profits. Shaw was released on $1 million bond. Even though the defense said she is obviously well known, the judge said Shaw was a flight risk. Aaron Katursky, ABC News, New York.
This is the Canadian Press. In sports, Blue Jays general manager Ross Atkins says injured outfielder George Springer is day-to-day with a strained left oblique muscle and could be available when Toronto plays its first game at its temporary home in Dunedin, Florida. Springer was placed on the 10-day injured list retroactive to Monday with the injury, which has delayed his debut with the Blue Jays. Toronto signed Springer as a free agent to a $150 million 6-year contract over the offseason. The slumping Toronto Raptors are hoping for some good luck tonight in Tampa, Florida, as they take on the Golden State Warriors. The Raps have lost 13 of their last 14 games and sit 11th in the Eastern Conference. Toronto point guard Kyle Lowry is expected to miss the game with a foot infection. The top 2 teams in the North Division face off in Winnipeg when the Jets host the Toronto Maple Leafs. Toronto has a 3-point lead over the Jets in the division standings after downing Winnipeg 3-1 on Wednesday. Elsewhere on the ice, it's the Battle of Alberta as the Oilers host the Flames in Edmonton. From the Canadian Press, I'm Lori Paris.
From the Global News Weather Center, here's a look at the forecast. After a cool but sunny Good Friday, The rest of the Easter weekend warms up. Tomorrow, a high of 8 with a mix of sun and clouds, getting cloudier later in the day. Easter Sunday and Easter Monday, they look beautiful. Highs of 10 and 12 degrees. Easter Sunday, lots of sun and light breezes. A little more cloud for Easter Monday with a high of 10 that day. For the rest of your work week looking ahead, highs of 11 and 12 degrees with a bit of rain mixed in as well.
Angry callers, lined up, line them up.
In my room it's forced.
Consuman para lo que realmente se necesita.
Dulce Jimenez Espinosa works for the Belen municipality on its water conservation program.
This is the John Oakley Show on Global News Radio 640 Toronto.
It comes back to the prevailing wisdom, received wisdom, you can get canceled. And to that end, I wanted to talk very briefly about that, the phenomenon, the corrosive phenomenon of cancel culture. John Metcalf is one who has faced it at Humber College for 20 years. He was helping to, I guess, mentor students there. He was on contract as a mentor in the School for Writers, but things started to unravel in December. And Mr. Metcalf is rather renowned in the world of literary criticism, as well as the author of numerous anthologies, also the recipient of the Order of Canada in 2004. His story now is he's joined us on the line. John Metcalf, appreciate you coming here onto the Oakley Show. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So, having set the stage that this was something where you were mentoring students, the prevalence of cancel culture on campuses, but maybe your case is widely emblematic of what's really taking place. Tell us what happened then to have you leave. You left your post. So set the stage or table for us. How did this come about?
Well, when you say I left my post, I resigned from the Humber School for Writers, where I'd worked for 20, 23 years, because I received a letter from the senior dean who was in charge of the Humber School for Writers, objecting to the fact that I had criticized a book by a writer of East Indian ancestry. I was accused by this wretched dean of criticizing the book because my judgment was what he called race-based. Now, what evidence he had for that, I have no idea. So I wrote back to him and I said, the reason that I said that I thought it was a terrible book was that it was badly written. And the fact that it was written by somebody of East Indian ancestry is neither here nor there. I was talking about writing and I was talking about a book. And I nowhere mentioned in this criticism that, the man's race, ethnicity, gender, anything of the kind. As a result of this, nothing happened. And so I was left really for 3 months. I wrote several letters saying, what is going on? I want an apology. I don't understand what you're talking about. And there was just silence from the other end. And I was driven eventually to writing to the president of Humber and requesting an apology on the part of the institution, and he never replied either. And the whole logic that lies behind it, was pure, Alice through the looking glass.
the criticism that I'd made of the writer had been done on a tape that I made about 11 years ago, I think, with another critic, and the dean said that. Well, I'll quote from his letter to me. He says, the safety of our students is paramount to Humber, and they must be assured of our commitment to provide safe spaces to develop their craft. So this one student had complained about this podcast that had been made, and how two old blokes having an argument on tape can make students unsafe sounds to me like pure claptrap. And I wrote a couple of times saying, really, I wish this charge of racism to be withdrawn because it was ridiculous. And was made without any proof or evidence at all. And again, I was just met with silence. So I thought, I really can't associate my name any longer with the Humber School for Writers. It's just disgraceful. And so I resigned. And Barbara Kay wrote a piece that was in the National Post on Saturday. And, she has sort of tried to put the series of events in order and drawn the necessary conclusion.
But there's a whole evolution involved here as well. Mr. Metcalf, again, John Metcalf is with us. He was mentoring students on contract at Humber for 20 years and resigned recently over what obviously is a shifting landscape when it comes to perceptions of people who have crossed the line into political incorrectness, or it's part of the cancel culture, I guess we can call it that in the vernacular. So if Barbara Kay has it right, and I'm assuming she did, this dean asked you if since this 2009 podcast where two blokes were kind of just, having a discussion, your views had changed and whether or not you were approaching your work with a broader EDI, equity, diversity, inclusion lens. What did you make of that? Because that does show you how the goalposts have shifted culturally or societally. What was your thought on that?
Well, my thought was that all of those things are all very splendid, but they've got absolutely nothing to do with writing. And, I couldn't care less what race, age, gender anybody is. I'm concerned with the words on the page. And, it seems to me that that kind of thinking, which is so prevalent, it's a new kind of Puritanism. And the letter that I got from this senior dean who's in charge of the Humber Writing School now was full of oily zeal, and it sort of reminded me of the witch finder general in 17th century England, or the witch hunts at Salem, Massachusetts, or Senator Joe McCarthy hunting out alleged communists, and they're all forms of hysteria. And it just seems to me so sad that, a difficult discipline is being sacked by these soft visions of how the world ought to be. When I wrote finally that I'd had enough of this, I wrote to Acosta in my letter and I said this: the hard realities of artistry can have no place in the soft safety of the utopian haven you are so devotedly engineering at Humber. Believing only in the strength of sentences, I find your squishy visions ludicrous. Yours is a lollipop world. And and I think of all these students cowering, in terror at somebody, making critical opinions about literature. It's in one sense, it's absolutely laughable, and in another, it's tragic.
Well, let me ask you about that tragic part of it. And by the way, I love the the eloquent way that you're stating this, especially the oily zeal of the dean. But this neo-McCarthyism is not to be trifled with. It's rearing its head more and more so, and to a point where there's almost like a monoculture existing in academia now, or what do we call it, the woke progressive consensus. How prevalent is that in academia? Do you see that this is something?
It's everywhere. It's all over the place. It's you know, making its way into, well, not make it, it's made its way into publishing now. And you know, when these kinds of questions, which are, it seems to me, you know, sociological matters, basically, they're not literary ones at all. But where, you know, people of color, or, you know, people from this country or that country are, you know, either criticized or applauded, or, you know, because of who they are rather than for what they've done. You know, I mean, we're in a dreadful place. And Barbara Kay was telling me about a young friend of hers who had written a book for children, and she referred to, you know, it was some kind of a fairy tale, or, you know, mythical kingdom kind of thing, and she had referred to God, and was requested by the editors to take this reference to God out because, you know, it might upset, you know, who knows. And this nonsense flows on and on and on, and it destroys discipline, it destroys knowledge. And I mean, when somebody says, you know, which is really what is being said, that, you know, X or Y is a great writer and we must pay, you know, homage to them because they are, you know, black or blue or pink or something, you know, it's ludicrous. And students, I mean, are they're not being taught anymore, they're being indoctrinated. And it would seem to me that without criticism, and very often without negative criticism, there's no way forward. You know, I would say that negative criticism was probably a prerequisite for learning how to write better, instead of being something that sent you searching for a safe room or a safe space in which to develop your craft, as Mr. Ricosta would have it. It's ridiculous. It's nonsense.
You know, Mr. Metcalf, in closing, I guess a postscript to the story in Barbara Kay's article in the Post on the weekend, too, you know, as much as this accusation made from the dean and also one of the people you were mentoring as having an anti-East Asian bias, isn't it true your own familial connection to those of East Asian descent? You have one?
Well, two of my children are adopted from India, yes. This is something that Barbara said. I wouldn't have said it myself, but yes, I mean, it seems rather unlikely that I would be rampantly racist, you know, in that particular direction or any other direction, given the fact that
your East Asian kids
two people that I love, you know, are of the same origins. So, I mean, we're gripped in nonsense.
Yeah, unfortunately, and we've lost another sentry on the watchtower, and John Metcalf, appreciate it, and really a telling tale, a testament to what's going on in academia. Sorry to see that you've resigned. Maybe you're better served for it anyway. Thanks so much for your time, and wish you the best going forward.
A pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, John Metcalf. Again, Order of Canada, 2004. Author of numerous anthologies and short stories, and he leaves because academia needs a good fumigation. That's the point.
It was a rainy day when Pizzaville realised we all have things we should cut back on. For me half-brother Ray Hall, that's ordering inflatable toys. For others, it's cars. So Pizzaville made the extra thin crust pizza. You get the same authentic Italian taste as our regular pizza, but with two
You just made a joke about exterminating.
Comes from this station. And from iDrive, providing cloud backup, full system backup, and on-site iDrive appliance to protect PCs, Macs, and servers from data loss due to crashes and ransomware at idrive.com/NPR. And from the Walton Family Foundation, working to solve social and environmental problems to improve lives today and benefit future generations.
We can clean
More
up this
information
field.
at
We make those people stop complaining about it. One or the other,
waltonfamilyfoundation.org.
but not both.
From NPR News, this is All Things Considered. I'm Elsa Chang.
And I'm Audie Cornish. The CDC issued new travel guidance today. The agency says people who've been fully vaccinated against COVID-19 can travel safely 2 weeks after their final dose. But the agency is still advising against non-essential trips, given the current rise in cases. NPR's Allison Aubrey joins us to help sort out the details. Allison, what are some more specifics from this new guidance?
Hi there. Well, I mean, the upshot is that given the effectiveness of the vaccine, the agency says that people who are fully vaccinated can safely travel. Here's CDC Director Rochelle Walensky. She announced the new guidance at a White House briefing today.
For example, fully vaccinated grandparents can fly to visit their healthy grandkids without getting a COVID-19 test or self-quarantining, provided they follow the other recommended prevention measures while traveling.
She says if it's international travel, the guidance is a bit different. Tests are required before you board a plane back to the U.S., and another test is actually recommended after you. But it's not zero. And Dr. Walensky says for all the people who are not vaccinated yet, the CDC continues to advise against all non-essential travel.
This change in policy, it doesn't seem like it's officially...
Who sort of transmorphed from one to the other. He's a columnist with The Economist 1843 and penned this piece about the wake-up call, why the pandemic has exposed the weakness of the West and how to fix it. Adrian, how are things in the UK this afternoon?
See,
cold and wet.
No, well, we do that.
And, you know, the lockdown drags on. We're very much locked down here.
Well, yeah, because you got the variants now, and so this is the wild card that's also plagued us as well. And well, we're sort of looking at possible worst-case scenarios. But I wanted to talk about something that you've written about here. Coronavirus has robbed me of petty annoyances. Whereas you saw the pandemic as a blessing, now perhaps you're not seeing it in such a light. Tell us how you kind of changed your perspective on things.
Also,
yeah, exactly. I'm one of these annoying people who sort of really quite like the pandemic at first, partly because I'm very lucky that I can work at home and do my job. I'm a writer, so it doesn't really matter. And lots of people are not in that fortunate position. So I was quite enjoying myself. But then I began to not enjoy myself quite so much. I partly started missing, the familiar things in life, like going out to restaurants, going to the theatre, going to the cinema, traveling, all of that sort of stuff. I missed those obvious things. But then I began to have a very strange sensation. I began to realize that actually I was beginning to miss the petty annoyances of life. It was actually the annoying things that were really missing from my life. My life had become too pleasant, too easy. Repetitive, a bit repetitive, but there were no irritating things happening to me. And that actually got on my nerves.
All right, it was too buttoned down, boringly familiar. So, what were some of the
every day was the same. Nothing really got under my skin. Meetings over Zoom were sort of quiet and formulaic, and I began to realize that what you need in life is a bit of grit in the oyster. Or in order to have a few triumphs, you need to have tribulations. So all the things that really annoyed me, like that you get on the train and the guy talking on his mobile phone very loudly, or there's somebody who sits next to you and takes up more than their fair share of the seat, or that there are all those loudspeakers, they're playing music or making announcements about why the service is so bad. All those terribly annoying things. Actually, I began to realize I was missing them just as much as I was missing the good things.
Wow. So that's kind of a balance thing here where you have to have, as you call it, grit in the oyster to make the pearl. and the little things that tick you. And so some of these things that you're longing to have reestablished here, what kind of things are you talking about? I mean, people again being too loud, maybe music that's overbearing, these kinds of things.
Yeah, music that's too loud, or the headphones that people wear that let out all this constant sort of drumming, hissing noise. All of those things I was missing. And I was also missing, I do a lot of traveling for my sins. And, traveling is annoying. You get on a plane and it's overcrowded. You almost miss it, all of those things. But I also began to miss the little triumphs that you have. Like, you sit down and there's nobody on the seat next to you. That is a massive triumph. Or you get upgraded to a high class. That's a great triumph. Or you go and hire, you go to the hire car and you get a slightly better car than you were expecting, or you get upgraded a bit, or you get a better room than you were expecting. And although nobody wants to sort of be driving around in a hire car, it's the triumph. It's the fact that you get something that you weren't expecting, that you really start getting happy. And also, during lockdown, every day blurs into every other day. Everything's basically the same. It's not bad, it's not good, it's just that every day is a repetition of the previous day. Whereas, in the old days when we had to go to work, some day would be really bad, some day would be really annoying, but then you get a compensatory good thing going on. It's, the grit in the oyster, the tribulation that leads to a triumph, or the little surprising thing. I was missing all of that variety. You need variety in life, and you need some annoying things to make up for the sheer mundanity of life. The other thing I began to realize is that you need serendipity.
On the bus that nobody likes,
my life is completely in lockdown. It's completely predictable. Every day is the same. Every meeting's the same. Everything's under control because it's all technologically smooth. But in the old days, when you actually went out, when you went on trips, you bump into somebody in a bar, you get put into a hotel that you hadn't experienced before. You go to what you thought would be some crummy town, and actually discover it's really quite nice. You got all these things that were surprises.
This town's small is going to be crummy.
You have to be willing to accept the downside.
Yeah, when it's not, you're disappointed.
I mean, the bad times.
And that makes you happy.
The appalling hotels you stay in, or the terrible towns you visit, in order to get the good ones as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've never thought of it in those terms, but now that you're saying it, I can almost live vicariously through your experiences. So the glory and predictability of the pandemic actually sharpens the sensibilities. We need a little irritants here and there to tell us we're alive. We're alive, damn it. And so you'd like to find yourself stranded in some out-of-the-way place. That's even the same GPS now and all these different gadgets that sort of inform you where you're going. Back in the day, I mean, we'd miss a sign, a cutoff, whatever the case may be. Being men, we'd never ask for directions. We'd have to sort it out on our own. It might take us another extra hour. But damn it, when you finally did figure it out, didn't you feel better about yourself?
You felt better about yourself. And also, you might end up in some place that you hadn't expected to go that actually would be quite interesting. I remember once when it's again in journalism, the serendipity, these unexpected things that make for the most of the best stories. I remember once in Madison, Wisconsin, I went to interview a state senator who was a Republican, and it took me a long time to get this interview. And when I went to see him, he said all the predictable things: low taxes, good; free trade, good; protectionism, bad. All the things. This was back in about 2003. All the things that would be expected, and it was basically a load of bromides. It was very, very boring. Then on my way back to the hotel, I took a wrong turn. I got lost, of course, and also being a man, I never asked anybody for directions. And as I wandered around, I suddenly came across this big group of survivalists. Like hardcore survivalists. They were wearing military fatigues. A lot of them were armed, and they were having. They
watch out for the ones wearing jail clothes that aren't obviously
in the wild. When the end of the world came, which they were expecting, there was an enormous amount of provision of dental equipment, chairs, dental chairs, and drills and things like that.
What?
Because I suppose, if the end of the world comes, one of the first things they need is to have, decent dental equipment. And I saw these people, and I read it. And what I understand now is I was actually looking at the future of the Republican Party. these are probably the guys who, 10 years later, were going to storm the Capitol. This is the hardcore of Trumpism. I actually learned, I didn't realize people like that existed then until I, took the wrong turning, bumped into them, and then talked to a few of them about how the state was
Uncontacted tribes
to be overthrown, how the end of the world was coming, and all of that sort of stuff they believe. So let's have more serendipity, more accidents, more just sort of getting things wrong. Now it's everything every day. It's planned. That's the big problem with the lockdown. It's not just that you're
keep the notes for your books and secret codes.
Everything's too planned.
Satellite can't read them.
Amen to that. I can certainly relate. If you're ever driving, and I'm not sure that you would be, but from Toronto down to Florida, along I-75, and you take a veer off about 10 minutes off the road, you'll still find people who are fighting the Civil War.
There's OCD and psychopath.
By the way, that's a very long drive.
It is a long drive. It's very smooth. It's predictable. It's like the pandemic has rendered us. So you got to get off the road, off the beaten path. Take the road less traveled. It'll make all the difference, as the poet once said. Cheers. By Adrian Wooldridge, columnist with The Economist, 1843. And on the pandemic, he writes some very humorous stuff.
Insightful, engaging, intelligent. Global News Radio 640 Toronto.
As you know, Frank Leo's achieved the #1 individual Remax agent worldwide for dollar volume. And
throw another 30 minutes on the fire.
Last year, Toyota sales were up by nearly. Honda set a new March sales record. Tesla beat expectations, and Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis all reported higher retail sales. Of course, everyone expected to do better than last March, when sales took a hit from the pandemic. But even factoring that in, these sales are strong. And that's creating a bit of a conundrum for dealerships and car shoppers. Manufacturers are struggling to make new vehicles as quickly as they'd like because of supply shortages. Meanwhile, the cars that are out there are selling fast. That means dealer lots are looking rather emptier than usual. Camila Dominaski, NPR News.
America's employers picked up their hiring last month, adding more than 900,000 jobs, far more than economists were expecting.
Their homes to escape war or violence, but others go in search of work to help support themselves and their families, or because they crave more self-determination and autonomy than they had at home.
Six years ago, Ariani had her first role as a soloist. She and her ensemble were touring Mexico, and she seized the opportunity to defect.
I get goosebumps.
Your help this spring.
To do your part, visit 640toronto.com from March 29th to April 4th as we all pitch in to help.
Your banks and communities across Canada.
Please go to 640toronto.com and click on the April Foods Day icon to donate what you can. And thank you for your help.
As a member of the Canadian Broadcast Standards Council, Global News Radio 640 Toronto is committed to the highest standards of broadcasting. We believe in being accountable to you, the listener, in our information and entertainment programming. If you have a comment to make about our programming, write to us. We'll respond to your letter and send you information on the council and its codes. A message from the Canadian Association of Broadcasters and Global News Radio 640 Toronto.
So I'm going to get in trouble for these snippets and all that.
That's a beautiful story. Of course, it's completely different to our normal life and our normal world.
Christmas. You're listening to the John Oakley Show on Global News Radio 640 Toronto.
What I consider to be something relatively benign, and nobody's beeswax but the people involved, but the story out of Southern California, or I guess it's Sacramento, it'd be Northern California, where a married mom of 3 kids has an OnlyFans page where she was posting what I guess could best be deemed soft erotica, and somehow somebody found out about it, got wind of it, and sent it to the principal and bishop at the parochial school that her kids attend. And what happened was, I guess after careful review of the material by the bishop and the principal, the schools decided to expel her 3 sons, 8, 10, and 12 years of age. Crystal Jackson is the woman, the mother, at the center of this storm, and she's joined us here on the Oakley Show in Toronto. Crystal, good to have you on board. Good afternoon.
Your mommy makes pictures that we're not supposed to look at. We did look at them, so you have to get out of school.
Good for me, but how about for you?
Oh, it's okay. I mean, it's been crazy, that's for sure, the last, I guess, week and a half. But, I mean, it's been a crazy ride for, like, 7 months. So, going a little bit off your story, the school actually found out about it last summer and deemed it to be, like, none of their, basically, business. So, but to make a long story short, there's this one mom in particular that just, like, couldn't take that, as a, you know, wasn't okay with that. So, so she, you know, joined my site and took a bunch of pictures off and spread them all around town, and then kept on hassling the principal to, like, you know, get us kicked out of school. So,
this one woman, are you saying then, Crystal, this one woman has a personal vendetta against you, and she's made it her personal crusade?
Oh yeah. Well, she, go ahead.
I was just going to ask. I mean, is she a mother of children at that school? I mean, what role does she play?
Yeah, so she's a mother. So she's a mother at the school. She's really, you know, wealthy, and this is what she does. I'm not her first person that she's done this to. I tried to take a person down. So you know, what I know about her, she's not like, it's not a religious thing. It's not an immoral thing. It's just the fact that I'm just her latest target. That's what it comes down to. Because like I said, she told the school back in July, and that's when the school found out. And in August, they said it was fine. And then she kept on sending packets of pictures from my Instagram and OnlyFans. So she's, you know, as much as she tells the school it's disgusting and disturbing, she actually is a paying member on my site, $15 a month, taking pictures off, printing them off, and then also they're being sent around, like, Sacramento. So, yeah.
So what's your name again? What's your internet name?
Oh, yeah, it's widely, yeah. A lot of people around Sacramento have seen me topless, so it's very embarrassing, to say the least.
All these people are looking.
So I guess it's got
they
more
recognize
than
you. That means
personal
they were
embarrassment
looking for a
involved
while.
now with your kids being expelled from school. So is it the parish that took the step, the school? I guess I'm not sure how the Catholic system works down there in Sacramento, but they then took it upon themselves. By what dint or excuse, a relatively reasonable one, I would hope, that had your kids expelled from school? The kids are 8, 10, and 12, as I understand. What excuse did they give you?
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of surprising because, like I said, they've known about it. But she just is a type of woman that she just, you know, is wealthy. She's not used to it. She has a lot of influence with her family, like old money in the area. So she's just not used to, like, someone telling her no. And it got bad in January where we found out there was another stack of pictures that got sent to the bishop, the priest, and the principal. And at that point, we knew from other people inside the school that it might be an issue. So we reached out to the diocese back in January and sent them a letter saying, hey, we'll open up the page for you so you see with, like, firsthand knowledge, like, what's actually inside. And if we need to leave the school, we're willing to leave. We left in that email that we sent them. We offered to leave the school twice in that email, like, hey, it's fine. It's like, if this is going to be an issue, because we don't want it to be an issue, we will leave. And we actually started looking at different Catholic schools to put the kids into. We never heard anything back. And then 2 weeks later, I'm assuming the same mom, because I got an email from the principal removing me as a second grade room mom because she got concerns. She got calls and emails from parents concerned that I was collecting pictures for the yearbook of children. And so that was, like, kind of the last straw for me, where I'm like, you're removing me as a room parent. We do 100 hours of volunteer work there a year. I run the crowd feed. We've been really good Catholics and people in the community, and you're going to remove me because people are complaining that I'm taking pictures of the kids for the yearbook. That was my straw. And that's when I was just like, I'm done being, like, the punching bag. And then when I went to the press to say, like, hey, just these moms will stop bullying me because this is just, it's outrageous that, you know, I have voicemails from, like, husbands calling from the Mean Mom's husband, like I'm a disgrace and disgust in the community.
Well, let me just stop you there if I can, Crystal. My understanding is it was not this woman who came across your OnlyFans pictures. It was rather her husband who did. Now, how the deuce would he have come across these things if he wasn't surfing?
Yeah, well, I mean, it was either. I mean, I don't know if it was. I know he's been on the page, and he's actually told other dads at school about the page because it's gotten back to us. So yeah. Somehow it came to them, and then they've just, like I said, she's a paying member on my site. She has a fake Instagram account that she is on my Instagram. So I think what bothers me is that, they both like to say that it's, disgusting and disturbing, and it's I'm bad for the community, although they're on it.
There is a pretty grave hypocrisy there. But they were saying that this goes against the teachings of the church. I guess this was a parish that said that, and that warranted the removal of your kids. But at the same time now, I'm understanding you're making all kinds of money. You can send your kids to private schools, the best ones in the US of A, if I'm understanding correct. What are you making about a month now? About 150 was quoted, 150,000 has been widely quoted. Is that about right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And that's, I mean, we went into it like just for fun marriage stuff, and we didn't think anything was going to even ever happen, right? I mean, and then like we were shocked at like, oh, what? Someone would come see this average mom? Like, what is this? And
the teachers
and so it like organically grew, and then we had the page up and running like almost a year. So we started in September 2019, and no one knew about it until last summer. I think the schools, like, honestly, they just didn't like the press. That's what it was. They didn't like the press that I went public saying, like, stop bullying me, because these moms, no one would stop these moms. And I mean, even last week, I'm still getting pictures that someone took that she has from my OnlyFans site and being passed around town. I'm still getting pictures from people.
Well, are you disturbed by that, Crystal? I mean, listen, if you're making $150,000 a month for these pictures, maybe you ought to send her a bouquet of flowers or something like that. Send her on a trip. She's inadvertently or maybe directly helped your business or your bottom line. Are you going to continue to do this now still as much, I guess, notoriety as it's drawn you? How do your kids react to that as well? Are they familiar with what's going on here, or what do they say?
Yeah, so my kids, they're small, right? We protected them from day one. They had no idea up until a few weeks ago. And the only thing we've only told them was, hey, your mom's a big internet model. And that was it. They don't know anything about OnlyFans. They've never seen pictures, nothing. I mean, it's all age appropriate, right? I would never tell them that. At this age, when they're older and they have questions, of course we'll talk to them about that. But they were really upset. But at this point, we were already moving schools anyways, and had an interview, and they went testing. They went to go take a test at a different Catholic school
So what you're saying is you're going to move the schools, and I don't know if that alleviates the problem. But how about you? Are you going to? Because you could stop doing this. Will you continue to do it? And here's another question out of curiosity. If you could even double, triple, quadruple that income from $150,000 a month, would you even consider going into softer forms of erotica or even pornography?
Softer?
No, because I've been offered that, right? And that's just, I have a hard line, and my line is, it even says that right on my page. There's no porn. I'm not a performer, and from day one, it's like I have a hard line what I will and will not do, and it actually takes away from who I am, right? I'm your average mom. Average mom is not going to be doing porn, so I'm definitely will refuse to even go on down that street. I do, I have a very hard line on that one.
How about your subscriptions, Crystal, if I can ask? Have they taken off numerically now because of all of the notoriety?
It has, yeah, it has. But that comes at a cost, right? It's, we've been approached by the media, because we had attorneys that went and tried to quiet some of this chatter up last summer. And so those entertainment firms know people in the industry, and they've actually come to us. And we have told people we didn't want to make any of this public because it opens me up to a liability and my family up to a liability. And this is the liability, right? That now everybody knows, and it's super embarrassing, right? That has to be hey, this is what's going on, or seeing my pictures, or the last week and a half. It has been so stressful.
Well, why don't you stop doing it then? I mean, have you considered stopping doing?
Yeah, we have, right? But it's like at some point, like when you have everybody who knows, then I mean, what's the point of then? It's already out there. It's the internet, right? My husband.
Right, but are you still posing then? Are you still posing and updating the file?
Oh yeah, I'm not gonna stop doing it now. I mean, why would I just stop doing it now when everybody knows about it? It's still gonna be out there.
Well, I just wondered if, that would certainly put a lid on it. Nobody could accuse you of continuing on in that vein, but it's your prerogative. I get it. And your kids should not be collateral damage in all of this. I think that's outrageous. It's just that, there is that human element, personal jealousy and what have you. So it's impacted your life. However, I appreciate you sharing the story with us. It's an internet sensation, and it was good to put it into some perspective this afternoon. Crystal, all the best to you and the kids going forward.
Yeah, thank you.
You're quite welcome. Crystal Jackson again. And this is the OnlyFans site that I guess does allow for people to make oodles of money by posing erotically and otherwise. Now you know.
This marriage just isn't going to work. I wish I had someone to help me through this.
Russell Alexander Family Lawyers has your back.
We only get a delivery of ice once a week, with which we can cool the fish. If we had electricity, we could sell more fish, and then we'd have more money for the education of our children, or for when they get sick.
You should be making fish soup than putting it in mason jars.
One might think that this would be the solution. The nearby Lake Turkana wind power project, built at a cost of 600 million euros by a public-private sector consortium. The hundreds of turbines have a joint capacity of 310 megawatts. That's a lot of electricity, and local people hoped to benefit. But in fact, they still rely on fossil fuel-powered generators, often old and unreliable. The villages and towns here are not yet connected to the national power grid. For Collins Makunda, it's very annoying.
It's always the same. I'll be welding something for a few minutes, and then the generator shuts down. I'm fed up with always having to run over to turn it on again. If I had electricity from the grid, I could work faster and more effectively.
The conditions here are excellent for a wind farm. Daily temperature fluctuations generate strong, predictable wind streams between the lake, where the temperature is relatively constant, and the desert hinterland, where it fluctuates a lot. The wind farm was built on land held by local authorities in trust for the area's inhabitants. So it's all the more dismaying that they don't have access to the power generated. Taran Lepolota says that has to change.
We have a right to finally be connected to the electric. All the villages and towns, all the tribes, the Samburu, Turkana, and Molo, and also the white people who live here. We won't allow ourselves to be divided on this issue. We demand electricity for everyone.
The wind farm provides around 15% of Kenya's electricity. So what's the problem?
The laws in Kenya and the regulations in Kenya for the provision of electricity. Lake Turkana cannot provide power to the communities. Lake Turkana must only sell to Kenya Power and Lighting Company, which is the off-taker, and the only licensed and regulated off-taker to be able to take power.
The wind farm is only responsible for electricity. Its distribution is in the hands of Kenya Power, in which the government has a controlling stake. We contacted the Kenyan Ministry of Energy. It told us that there are plans to connect the communities around the lake to the grid, but it's not clear when. Only a few people in this village have solar collectors, and there's just one TV for the whole community. Many here are angry and feel the wind farm is to blame.
If I were a sorcerer, I would curse it, so the whole wind park would stop working.
But that wouldn't help Taran Lepolota or his fellow villagers either. They'll just have to wait for the day when electricity reaches their community.
That
That's all from us this time, but we love hearing from you, so drop us a line, global3000@dw.com.
And brought it to the new location, and he was nervous as heck because he kept it in a box and took it out of the box with cotton and held on to it because he was afraid he was going to damage the filament. They installed the light, they turned the power on, and it didn't come on. And everybody kind of panicked and gasped, and he jiggled the bulb like all good electricians, and people will switch on it, and on it came, and it's been on ever since.
Right, it was a good shape, I guess.
Out of the rotating switch, because they had the original socket it was in. Wow. Rotating on-off switch.
Again with Tom Brummel, retired Deputy Fire Chief of the Livermore Fire Department in California, where they house the light. 120 years this thing has been lit. And, I mean, I can't, as I was saying before you joined us, I got, lights outside under the soffits. They stay on about 6 months and burn out. They promised 2,500 hours on the box. That's a lie. How the heck do you get this? How is this one managing to stay on for 120 years?
That's
4 months
been
of change isn't
age-old question. I've been
I bet you don't have the
under that light for the last 50 years and still don't have an answer for that. It's a mystery.
I've seen that
The scientists and experts from all around the world have looked at this light bulb, including Lawrence Livermore Lab scientists have looked at it, and they can't understand the longevity. That's perfect vacuum on it, we think.
Is that what it is? I mean, I'm thinking, Lawrence Livermore Lab, nuclear lab right there. It's one of the preeminent labs.
We all know how well
when you think about it in the context of the sweep of history, this predates the Wright brothers and Flight at Kitty Hawk, which was 1903. This light's been burning since before airplanes.
Automobiles. Before automobiles. Pandemic.
It was still in the time of... Hang on just a second. This is another bane of my existence is the phone. Why won't this one die? The light won't die, and my phone, I can't turn that off either. But listen, so this light now, any idea? I mean, you say how old it is. Where did it come from? Was it purchased commercially, or it was made?
So the owner of the water and power company in Livermore in 1900 actually donated the light bulb and it was a host card station or a fire station, and they had kerosene lanterns and whatnot for the volunteers, and so he donated the light and had the electrical light bulb installed there. It's kind of a novel thing, and but the light bulb actually had come from Shelby, Ohio. Shelby Electric in Shelby, Ohio constructed the light bulb, and all women, by the way, that were all women that were employed there that constructed the light bulb, and they confessed it was the longest burning light bulb in the world. Well, they were absolutely correct. But they said that it was called the best lamp in the world. Sold for about 40 cents in 1900.
40 cents. Wow, you certainly got money out of it. All the juice that's gone through there. How many watts?
It's a 60 watt light bulb.
I thought maybe if it was low voltage or something like that, low watts, it might have stayed around a while. But that's a 60. That's pretty normal.
Yeah, there's a website you can go to and actually see the bulb live. It's called centennialbulb.org, and you can see the bulb actually hanging from the ceiling, and it's live. And it looks very dim, and it looks like it's putting out about 4 watts, they suggest, or it's roughly 16 lumens, if you will. But the light looks dim, but the fact is that we even had one just like it. We sent it to some electrical engineers in Annapolis, Maryland, and they took that one apart and identified the filament to be just 0.01 millimeters, which is, in comparison, the size of a hair. Your human hair is 0.06 millimeters.
Mine's much finer.
But when you look at it online, even the filaments look like they're glowing huge.
Yeah,
they're not.
Well, and the other thing is, obviously, there's a website or web page dedicated to it. I mean, this is more than a local phenomenon. You've had people actually come to visit and check out this light bulb.
From all around the world, I can recall being in the station even as a young firefighter. We all had to learn about the light bulb because we had visitors every day. We'd have buses pull up out front, and a whole tour bus would drop 20 people or 30 people in there. Wow. So it's pretty bizarre. This last year, and because of the COVID, no one's been able to actually go in to see it up close, but they can see it from afar looking through the windows of the station.
It's over 100 years old.
Yeah.
It's still burning.
It defies physics or credulity or whatever else. You know what else? It's a thing I'm thinking about. Maybe Edison, had sort of developed the light bulb to be this way, and then somebody had a brighter idea saying that we've got to build in planned obsolescence, so people have to keep replacing them and buying them. This would, if you didn't have to replace a light bulb, where would places like GE be? So there you have it. This is fascinating. Yeah, well, you don't have to replace them.
Shelby went out of business in 1912. Go figure.
They would still have to build
nuclear reactors. Obsolescence. I mean, that's all about it.
Place next door used to be
there's a lot of history around the light bulb.
It's the same damn
Davis cartel and functional obsolescence.
Yeah, it's a marvelous story, and it's seen several generations come through that fire hall. Yours included Tom Brummel, retired deputy fire chief with the Livermore Fire Department out there in California. Really appreciate it. Fascinating story. Thanks for sharing it.
Absolutely.
Here, analyze this coffee cup over at the nuclear science
Some
lab.
see challenges, we see opportunities. Some see doubt, we see hope. Some see limits, we see possibilities. At Amicus Senior Lifestyles, it is possible to be safe, active, and connected, to experience a premium lifestyle tailored to you, to make plans and live life on your terms.
So,
the most awkward kid. Knew I
my incandescent
was
bulbs
somewhat
last
eminent,
longer than a year.
I didn't know how to not be. You know what I mean?
My
It's weird because
incandescent
I've
bulbs
never
last
thought, oh, I
longer
was
than a
good.
year if I just
And then I have
plugged
people
in.
that come up to me and tell me,
The
well,
fluorescent
you're
lights
the
might
most
do that. They
popular
last
kid
like
in
5
school.
years, but they get
What do
real
you mean you were
dim.
bullied? Well, it was the idea that it could happen almost. Like I had this secret and I'm tap dancing all around, and I learned very early that I could keep the bullies at bay with my humor. And so that was in many ways kind of a defense mechanism.
Yeah.
And I find that even as an adult, you come up to me and I'm not quite ready to, or I'm feeling kind of shy. People go, shy, you're not.
To change
But feeling a little shy, I'll jump into it.
I'm working on a building. I'm working on a building.
Leslie Jordan, what a joy to talk to you. Thank you so
What was
much.
that about?
Thank you so much for having me.
His new gospel.
Okay. I'm not gonna die right away. I feel like I probably won't. Oh fuck! Like, can something decide to work but not work? Jeez. I don't know what the fuck the holdup is. This bullshit. Holy fuck, man. I just click that. Do it again. Nope. What the fucking hell? There it goes. Well, isn't this interesting? So everything I touch freezes up after I touch it. That's hilarious. Of course. Oh, this puts us off schedule or some shit, right? Like, what's the purpose? What is your purpose? Fucking hell, man. Like, seriously, you're a waste. You're a waste. Holy fuck, man.